Very good. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the zoning night. We'll start first with a confirmation of the agenda tonight. Are there any questions about or changes to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Moving on, have the members of the committee had a chance to review the minutes of the previous meeting? Are there any changes to or revisions to those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes of last month's meeting?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much. We'll start the meeting by outlining for ourselves and for the public online or in person the purpose of the group, which is outlined in the procedures. Document is to play a key role and collaborate with county staff by providing input and assistance in examining community challenges and opportunities related to land use, in preparation of goals and strategies to implement a regional vision, and most fun for tonight, in recommending changes in zoning. So these meetings are primarily for our use as a work session and not the primary mechanism for the public to provide feedback on the region plan. Public feedback can be provided to the county's region plan website and community hub sites along with future public meetings. And the public should be aware that if they submit written comments, they will be distributed to the committee for review. If there are members of the public who wish to speak tonight, there will be a limited public comment period to start the meeting this evening. And so for more on that, I'll turn it over to county staff.
Okay. I'm doing 20 things at once here. Okay. Thank you. Our first, so one change to the agenda, and forgive me if you just said this and I was doing 20 other things, is that because this is where we're starting to go through some of our zoning change applications and starting to have those conversations, we decided that with this meeting and the next two, we wanted to move the public comment period to the beginning so that if applicants wanted to come and kind of say their piece, they would have 2 minutes to do that. Did you just go through all of this? I'm sorry. I really
Just
wasn't.
very briefly. I
Okay.
hope that you would go into more detail, so thank you.
Okay, so I know that I see that we have one attendee here in person and one online. Do we have anybody who wants to speak? You would have 2 minutes to do so. Okay, and we do have somebody, our attendee from the virtual space. So let me click on this. Mrs. Weller, can you hear me? You can unmute and.
Am I unmuted?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 2 minutes, please. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Deborah Weller, and I'm president of the Old Millersville Neighborhood Association. Land use and transportation are closely linked. Although outside of Region 6, development and traffic in the Route 3 corridor impacts Region 6 and needs to be fixed before land use intensity along Route 3 corridor is increased. The community feedback maps for the Region 6 shows that our community is concerned about commuters using Cecil Avenue and Millersville Road to avoid congestion when traffic backs up on Route 397. This is a safety and quality of life issue. At the January 14th meeting, Mr. Uzzi introduced 6 potential commercial hubs for the SAC for consideration. We are concerned about several of these, but will focus on the Millersville Road and Maryland Route 3 at this time. We oppose focusing new development here because of the negative impacts on traffic and environment. Traffic congestion and safety are already poor. The intersection is in Region 5, but the problems have impacts on western part of Region 6. According to SHA, this is a grade F intersection, and planned road improvements will at best maintain the status quo. New development will make it worse. Again, comments in the Region 6 community feedback expressed this concern. This area is also in the Jazz Bears watershed, for which Plan 2040 the commitment to restore and conserve. Designating the area as a future node would be a serious backsliding. We asked that the Jazz Bears environmental overlay to protect Jazz Bears branch from the impacts of future land use, as discussed in the Environmental Protection Resource Conservation Background Report 2040, page 17, be included in the Region Plan 6. Such an overlay would protect the state's and county's $8 million restoration investment, as well as a valuable natural resource.
Ms. Weller, we've reached 2 minutes, so let me ask you, if you have additional comments, please submit them to us to the Region 6 email, region6@aacounty.org, and we can distribute your full comments to the full SAC, okay?
That is fine. I'll provide some additional background to support what I said. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Sure, thank you for coming. We
Appreciate
appreciate
it
it.
as well.
If I could add to that,
Yes, please go ahead and state your name, please.
I live where Millersville Road intersects General's Highway,
Mhm.
and that is a major problem, is people coming off 97. It took me almost an hour to get here tonight because of the traffic, which should take me 15 minutes. And with the new fire station there, which is huge,
Mhm.
I can see some traffic issues with that. And also now that they're going to do something with Crownsville Hospital, and also there's supposed to be a park on Millersville Road, all of that traffic has nowhere to go. It's interesting because 4 years ago, I moved off 301 to get away from this, and I'm right back on it. Thank you for letting me.
All right, and for the record, will you state your name, please?
Penny Knott.
Penny Knott. Okay, thank you. I think these are our only 2 public attendees at this point. So with that, I think we can close the public comment period. Thank you both for joining us and speaking.
I echo all their concerns.
So, let's see, what I would like to do is pull up, I want to get into a little bit of so here's the agenda that you all just approved, and I'd like to get a bit into, some of the feedback that we've gotten on the community hubs, section that was drafted. I hope you all had a chance to at least look at that and see what.
We called it commercial nodes, not community hubs. I
Yeah,
don't like the word commercial.
well, there are 2. So let me go through a couple of the comments that we had, please, and get a little bit of feedback. The first, and I'm kind of grouping a bunch of, we got comments from three different respondents, and I'm going to go through kind of the easier ones first, or the more minor ones to the more substantial ones. And so the first thing, a couple of folks had mentioned, there's a need to prohibit drive-throughs within the Crossroads Community Hub. So if you had a chance to read through, there were those 6 hubs that we talked about. They're sort of divided into two categories. And I'm not totally sold on that, but it does seem like the 3 that are on Crownsville or General's Highway probably should have a different vision than the other 3 that we call more roadway oriented ones. And so then within the Crossroad Community Hubs, those are the ones on General's Highway, a need to prohibit drive-throughs and that kind of architecture. We do have it's already in the text, and so I think it was missed, auto-oriented design features such as drive-throughs and front parking areas should be limited or prohibited, so we did, include that. There was a-
Small business isn't mentioned in the final one time.
Okay, so that can be something that we can be sure that we,
Can we also, I don't know how you say
Prohibit
it,
chains.
limit, shoot, like franchises, I mean, net chains? And keep it to local? Is that
Legally,
possible?
that could be problematic, but there's potential design guidelines that could make them more difficult to develop.
What's the
Yeah,
small
yeah.
business zoning mean? Does that do that or no?
small business zoning, let me introduce, I should have started with this, I apologize. Joan Jenkins is with our zoning division, and she's here to help answer questions exactly like that one, but also just to provide support from the zoning perspective as we get into some of this. But the small business zoning, it is a zoning category, it is kind of our least intensive
Yeah.
commercial zoning category, correct?
Yes, it's meant to be kind of between residential and commercial. Often in places where there are houses that are on a main road,
Like those on general.
like this little highway that become commercial, like that.
Yeah, I guess it just, like, we did a map and we did visioning, and it was like this very quaint village, small business.
Right.
And I didn't get that sense when I read this, the words that popped out of me, commercial, and I don't know, maybe my, paranoia is coming in, but I just didn't feel like it captured the essence of what it was.
Right, and I think that comes out even more when you look at some of the requests going to C4s, it's like, well, wait a
Yeah.
second. You know, maybe there is, maybe we should use the small business one instead, I don't know.
Yeah, so let's focus on this
Okay, sorry.
community hub piece, but it's gonna bleed over to
Exactly.
our zoning conversations, and then that's gonna come back and inform this a bit. So I hear what you're saying. I think that there's a desire primarily for smaller local businesses and such. And I think that is what we were trying to get across. So the way that this is formatted, and I have an idea of actually restructuring that draft section. The two types of hubs, the one that was more roadway oriented, we started with that one mainly because we numbered those first, and so just keeping them sequential. I think we can do something different. Bring forward the ones that are on general highway, the more crossroads oriented hubs, and focus on the trail oriented intent with those as well, and kind of keep it emphasize the human scale and the pedestrian connections and such that we want with those. And then I guess my question then is, do we want to talk at all about the other three, what the Millersville Road, Crownsville Road, and Defense Highway, and the third one at the end of on Veterans Highway? Do we want to talk about those at all, or
I mean, I think since
delete
we
that?
have these folks here interested, I mean, the Millersville and Route 3 one, I'm kind of alarmed about too. I mean, I think is it already zoned commercial? I see them putting in the sewer and water. I mean, I just didn't like the references about, like, oh, we're gonna improve things by adding stormwater. I mean, all those wooded lots around there are wetlands, and taking out wetlands and putting in some small stormwater, rock features that, if you look at the other ones along Route 3 aren't well maintained. It's not like we're improving the environment by, I don't know, I don't look at it as improved by building another gas station on that corner or whatever is supposed to go there. Yes.
What corner are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about Route 3 and Millersville Road, and that's where you had that weird overlay, and then I think I had a comment about the Bestgate Road and, just how the town center sprawls across General's Highway, into the General's Highway part,
Yeah.
but it doesn't match like the sewer. doesn't match like the environmental overlay. So I don't know
Yeah.
why it ever jumped over there, but there's also, so there's the Jabez restoration on the Route 3, and then there's also a restoration there, and there's sort of like stormwater.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that we are trying to develop or make those higher intensity areas. So some of the road
I
ones are
think-
concerning.
I mean, I don't think that was the intent, and if it came across that way, then I don't think that was what I was hearing from the group at all. And so if that's what you're reading, then we need to go back to the drawing board and try to revise. I will point out, Bestgate Road isn't Region 6 at all, so that's a bit outside of our purview, but, I guess kind of backing up to, again, these two typologies,
Wouldn't Crownsville Road and Defense Highway, I mean, that's a local crossroads too,
That's,
how is that roadway oriented?
it has a gas station on one corner and an automotive and it's changed hands a number of times, but it's an industrial type building.
yeah, so I think from,
And then it has another business on the third corner.
yeah, I think from my
Chain link
standpoint,
fence.
kind of looking at those other, that one, the Millersville Road, Route 3, and the Veterans Highway and General's Highway 1, those are a little bit more, I think currently their character is a little bit different than the three that are on General's Highway. And I'm not sure that they're gonna as easily ever transition to a vision of something that is small, human scale, pedestrian oriented, the way that the ones on General's Highway. I kind of feel like that energy should be focused on those three on General's Highway. This is how is this landing? I don't know. I
So
see
you're
some
saying
chaotic
use
heads.
like the small business zoning language for the crossroads one, is that what you're, like, making it more? And I think pedestrian connections was a comment.
Especially because you've got the South Shore Trail there, and you brought that up in your write-up.
Pedestrians. not
It's more
in the
pedestrian and bicycle type of, and that's where that small business zoning might work well.
But potentially, yeah, we'll have to look at it as we
Yeah.
get into the zoning map, but,
So I looked at these too, and I started from the place of just looking at all these hubs and thinking that, number one, they're all already somewhat commercialized. So we're not introducing commercial to a place where it doesn't exist. We're taking places that already have commercial development and deciding to what extent we're willing to tolerate more. And so what I didn't see in the document was really a discussion of what's the radius from like an intersection? How far are we talking when we say a hub? Is it a quarter mile from the intersection of Defense Highway and Crownsville Road, or is it 2 blocks? Is it what's the extent of which we're willing to consider this as a hub? Because when someone comes in with a rezoning application and says, I'm in the hub, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We kind of need to have a little bit of an idea of
Or
how far outside this intersection we're.
Or we start with how connected those individual hubs are,
Sure.
right? Like, one of the ones, the rezoning at Generals and Harold Harbor Road, if you go in any direction from that intersection, there's no good way to get to those properties except for turning off the main roads where there's already tons of people turning. So it's not necessarily a distance, but also like a connectedness that I think is important, which I think is kind of your point, Patrick, with these ones. The one I'm thinking of is the General's Highway, Veterans Highway intersection. Like, we're not gonna put a playground in a park,
Yes.
at Gina's Cantina, right? Like, we're not gonna like turn it into like some, pedestrian playground. We do want stuff to be there that's important to us and that serves the community, but, we can look at that area a little bit differently. I think the comments about Millersville Road and 3, that's even like, I would even think of that as like a third category. That is like
I was
a,
wondering.
let's not go near that until the state
Sure.
figures out what that road's gonna look like, and then we decide like, hey, is it really a good idea to put our 87th chicken restaurant right there at that intersection? Like,
The one last
I
piece of
totally agree
grass.
with that.
yeah, there's one unpaved
Why
piece
can't
of
that be a
intersection.
parking? the trail is right there.
Right,
Like,
well, so I think maybe like that one comes out and we just say like, look, Route 3's gotta get sorted out before we entertain changing this, but I take your point about the one down by, what is it, Heritage Harbor or whatever it is?
Yes.
And then the one up by Gina's Cantina, I think those are different character than the ones that generals, and I think we look at the connectiveness of those nodes, those hubs, whatever we call them, and base our decision partially on that, I think.
Okay.
I really like I saw someone trying to cross the street, by Wars, I mean, everyone wrote off my bridge idea, but I just feel like if there's gonna be something on this side and there's stuff on this side, and you could park in one spot and like get to both, I don't know, but I think
I was really concerned also with that corner, Route 3 with the egress and ingress. It's already, as you know, a dangerous
Yeah.
intersection. It's high risk, so I don't know how you could add an additional risk by putting commercial.
Can we go to the second slide there? I did add some language into the draft text addressing that, including a reference to a potential pedestrian bridge to the hospital site. And then, I think one of you had mentioned, kind of minimizing the expansion of the commercial footprint. I think this goes to what you were saying, Joel, as well. So maybe a better definition of the extent of these hubs, in that draft
And there's
text.
also something in there that was like, we're doing this so like residents don't have to leave. I mean, like, we know we can't get everything from these small business hubs, like, we are okay with that. We don't wanna live somewhere where that is possible, we like how it is, so it's like, we know that we're gonna have to go out of the region for some stuff.
Yeah,
This is more to support local businesses than to avoid, and then to have every service.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the intent. I think we're on the same page. I will say that the second sentence of the draft section indicates higher intensity land uses, including large commercial and service uses, are anticipated for areas outside of Region 6, such as Pearl Town Center and along Maryland 3.
I thought that was good.
Yeah, so I feel like it's covered. Maybe we just need to emphasize.
Yeah, I think adding words like small business, like pedestrian doesn't come up at all, local activity, local. I like service nodes more than commercial nodes, I just don't want.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
Or small business nodes.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that's what we had in
Yeah.
our vision.
The vision statement.
okay. Okay, so not, let's avoid commercial nodes.
Avoid commercial.
Cause I did totally, I think the last time we talked about this and I pulled it up, I think that was kind of the starting terminology, so.
I mean,
This is helpful.
is the jump from this to like zoning, the overlay? Like, some of those overlay language of like the village like, is that where this would take us? Like, or what, how does this evolve? I guess,
Well,
Right.
this is a conversation, and so this is gonna inform what we are talking about when we get into the zoning discussions for some of these applications in these areas. But it's all kind of a back and forth, conversation until we put it all into a draft and give you all the review and just make sure that we've got, that we're where we wanna be as a group. So it all sort of informs back and forth with that.
Cause I thought some of the overlay language was good, I just didn't, it was hard to connect all the dots.
When you say overlay language, are you talking about the policy area?
Yeah,
Overlays?
yeah,
I mean, the vision statement.
no, some, like, in your land use brief, there was some, overlay.
Okay.
Village center.
Village, and I just, I think, thought some of that language better expressed
Yeah,
versus this stuff.
so Desiree's gonna get into that a little bit. She's gonna start us with that. I'm gonna go ahead and scoop and say, you've included it in the presentation, what the Village Center overlay is. There's not one. in Region 6. I'm not sure that it's the right designation, and we can talk about why. And I don't know that you need it, but we can,
So it's just
but
like,
maybe you do want it.
this
for some
description,
areas.
this description in our plan is more just an enforcement of not letting commercial expand. Or, enforcing the heights, and I mean, I'm just, it's not really gonna change things.
Strategies that we, based on these, we could come up with some strategies for implementation, like the drive-through example was one we had previously, so that would be something that would have to be implemented in the code. TBD on how that would get implemented, but it would, essentially, we could look at an overlay, but that's probably not the right tool. What may be more useful is coming up with some strategies that could implement these community hubs. I don't know.
Is it a bad time to ask now what the small business zoning means? Is that, is this? Yes. What does that
She kind of,
mean?
she kind of covered it earlier when she was saying the houses that transition to businesses. So
Okay.
it's more, we typically, I mean, I think that we don't typically change things a lot to small business. It's like to incentivize new development. It's more, this is already existing and it's appropriate. It's a transitional zone basically from residential to commercial because it's a home that's now operating as a business.
So someone would go from an R1 or 2 to a SB and then to a C1?
Well, they wouldn't necessarily, I mean,
Well,
if they're just maintaining their home current and then using it as
If they're
commercial.
using it as commercial, because they're transitioning, they're now using it as one of these, we're using it for an electrical office or something. Or we're using it for our business now. Do they go to an SB?
Are they like, do they not maybe have to meet all the parking requirements? Is that kind of what the small
We have
business?
certain home occupations that people can have, maybe not an electrical contractor, we have an office there. But they do have, limitations on, you can build a new building, you don't have to have a house that's being transitioned. There were some changes to bulk regulations because now you can have around 30,000, principal structures are maximum floor area is 10,000. That was some larger.
How does that compare to C1?
That's good.
And I mean, I guess, I know we're not on this topic yet, but when we get in yours, Desiree, it's like, how many variances have been issued in these, like, how did we get to where we were today? Were they all like strict zoning applications that were approved, or like, I mean, was it?
Within these specific areas?
Yeah, or like have variances and stuff allowed them to kind of.
Well, there are some that they're just ignoring the zoning.
Right.
I mean, that's.
Like, what's our, I think like having
That's what I
something
think
about the
that's
stats on that is some accountability that, I don't know, environmental groups would probably like to see. But
Cindy Carrier with the planning office, it's really difficult to answer that question without looking at each specific site. I mean, some businesses were here before this. So we have to look into that and, I mean, today, that doesn't happen as often.
Not as often.
Right. I mean,
It does occasionally,
yeah, but I mean,
Didn't we
people,
just find one?
but that one's been there a long time, or it had been
But it
something,
got turned down, right?
yeah,
And so they're going ahead and doing it.
somebody's doing.
Where's that?
That's the place that's behind one of these zoning requests. It's an automotive place that's right next door to, if you're facing the Honeybee place.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
to the
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's an automotive.
Leverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Place back there.
Yeah, somebody requested non-conforming use tonight, trying to want to deny. But
But they're using it anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And there just seems, that just seems odd.
To answer the question about C1, there's no building size, it's all about the setbacks and where ratio of the setback covered by structures and parking. Like 75% of the area can be covered by structures and parking.
Any other general comments on community hub slash nodes?
So you're gonna rework it and send it back out or?
Yeah, I can do that. What I would also like to do is take some of, these comments and work it into one of the next rounds of public input. And obviously, I'm not gonna take this draft and put that out for public comment, but like some of the key ideas, I'd like to, and I don't know how we would do it yet, we gotta think about that, but like work it into one of our upcoming surveys and get public input. And then that way we can all sort of assess where the public sits on some of these ideas. And if it falls flat, then that's good to know before we put the draft out.
And I think it's also the hospital center is a hub too in our region, so, I mean, if we're,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess one way that the hubs could be used, not zoning, but it's like areas for that economic development team to like incentivize businesses,
That's
you
a
know.
very different type of hub than it's a recreation part of.
Does the county have money to acquire land, like they did with the Forney property, they bought it for $1 million and put up Bacon Ridge?
Mhm.
And I agree that, you know, extending South Shore, isn't there gonna be a bike trail that goes over to Overton anyway? Can they not acquire that rear property? I'm not I think it's a drilling company, it's already commercial, or those guys back there, they're brothers, it's a generational thing, they've been there forever.
Are you talking about at the corner?
1697 Millersville, yeah, the
Okay.
corner of Route 3 Millersville.
Mhm.
So I think it's historically been, you know, there's dead trees there, it's very unsightly, I think, just sort of in this holding pattern, but it might be an opportunity for the county to acquire that land, if not all, but in part. So I think those Greer people, guys, drilling company that's been generational, still live back on the houses back there. The main family house, which is situated.
I mean, some of it's kind
Maybe
of
you could
cool.
wrap like a 5-acre loop around it and acquire that and add it to South Shore Park.
Patrick, in the interest of time, is there any more about just zoning or hubs that you want to get to before we get into individual properties and requests? Want to give you a chance to say whatever you need to say as staff before we start diving in detail to each
Yeah,
particular property.
I mean, I think I kind of covered, we got the comments on this first draft. Yes, let me kind of rework, and maybe come up with a way to put some of these concepts out to the public, and we'll run that by you all, before we do that, and just see how that lands with you all first.
It sounds like there's consensus, at least, that everybody's somewhat, I wouldn't say satisfied, but somewhat satisfied with the commercial uses that are in the hubs, but we're very sensitive to how they would
That's what I'm
expand or what
Yeah.
new, if something new is gonna come in, we wanna have a very
Right.
good idea of what that's gonna look
And that's
like.
the intent of this section. It would not be a regulatory section because these plans themselves are not regulatory, but it does give at least long-range staff the ability when a development proposal does come through and they're maybe meeting all of the development and zoning requirements of their property. We have this to point to and say, look, there's a vision that's been adopted by council and endorsed by the community that you either are or not meeting this and you need to adjust and it matters. So that's what we're trying to get into the plan. And I don't think we want to abandon the idea altogether, but we do want to get it right. So.
And I guess just one more thing on the Millersville Route 3, I mean, that's one of the ones where there's not very much there right now, so, I mean, it might already be
Historic
zoned that way,
house,
but
yeah.
it's, and there's also like the old school that's there, I don't know what that is.
That's a separate property.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, nearby.
All right. Okay, well, I'll take those comments and we'll move forward, but, let me hand it over to Desiree, who will give an intro. Some of this stuff is probably some stuff that you all have heard, but also needs to be on the record as well.
Yeah, it was, a lot of it's in the briefing paper, so hopefully this is not all brand new information to you all, but we want to cover this, kind of give some context before jumping into the applications and the zoning discussion, so. So we have, kind of three main maps guiding land use three main key maps that are guiding land use and development in the county. So the first two, are adopted with Plan 2040, that's the development policy area map and the plan land use map. So kind of going from broad to more specific, start with development policy area being the most broad. It has 8 categories where development and redevelopment are encouraged, or where preservation of built character or natural features are prioritized. It's not land use, but it informs the planned land use designation. So the planned land use is a little more specific. It guides the anticipated development patterns in the county over 20 years. It's policy, it's not regulatory, but it informs the zoning. And then lastly, the zoning needs to be consistent with the planned land use by state law. So the zoning is what implements the planned land use. So, let's go to the next slide. The zoning is like I said, the first two, the development policy area and the planned land use were updated with Plan 2040. And the zoning is what we update with the region plans. So it's just kind of bringing it all into alignment with these region plans. So this is the Region 6 development policy area. You can see it's largely green, which is the rural and agricultural designation. So you can read the definition of rural and agricultural. So it's characterized by large lot residential areas, farms, and very limited commercial and industrial areas outside of the priority funding area. These areas are served by private septic systems, developments limited, and protect the rural and agricultural heritage and economy, limit the costly extension of public facilities and services. So we have these areas designated all throughout the county. It happens that Region 6 is primarily rural and agricultural. And then there's a small portion of neighborhood preservation, which is mostly about maintaining the existing residential neighborhoods. There are commercial, other land use types allowed in those areas, but it's primarily about keeping the character consistent, any new development, keeping it consistent with what's already there.
And this is why from the kickoff, I had kind of scooped and said, we're probably not looking at major intensification within Region 6. That's just one reason.
Yeah, so from a very broad perspective, this is what the county has said, will be happening in terms of growth and development in this region. So not much. Okay, so next slide.
But that's not enforceable.
Yeah. Well, this is what informs our zoning decisions. So this kind of all, it's all context. And then the critical corridor, we have a small portion up along, it's the purple area. So there's the definition right here, existing developed areas along major roads where opportunities to improve safety and mobility exist. These areas often form the economic center of a community. Redevelopment that improves multimodal outcomes and preserves adjacent neighborhoods is encouraged.
Is that just the Route 3 one corridor?
So just,
It's
it's
like a
just that
tiny nick
little
in our-
sliver
yeah.
up by Route 3.
Okay.
And then we don't have any town center in Region 6, but the parole town center is at the very
And
border
that's what I
there.
was talking about, that weird little stick out. I don't understand that, but I
Bowling
know
alley.
it's outside of our, but
Bowling
that
alley.
doesn't line up, that
Least
doesn't
in
match up
90s.
with the sewer, the other things, it's like, that's just red, I don't know why.
Okay. So then, village center overlay, which is what you were bringing up, Jasmine, we also don't have any in Region 6, but those areas are characterized as existing or planned, walkable, pedestrian-oriented, mixed-use areas, suburban or rural. So we have various definitions of, there's different types of village centers. Some are more suburban, some are really rural, some are a little more urban, but they're supposed to be small scale, focused on, basically community hubs that are walkable. And then the implementation of that is the development of a village sector plan for those areas. So we would basically designate, not that we would do this in Region 6, but in other regions we did, we.
Bringing it up in case.
Yeah, we
you-
could,
you may want to.
designate an area as an overlay, and then that would prompt a sector plan being completed.
What's an example of a rural one in our?
Wayson's
Okay.
Corner, or not in our, we don't have any in our region.
Not region state, but I'm saying the county, where's that?
Wayson's Corner. I think it's
Galesville.
Galesville.
Mhm.
I could see like, once you get the trails. and-
Of the rural village, I was wondering. what that
Okay,
was
so maybe a
like.
next cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About it. My concern with doing this in Region 6 is that this is, the village center overlay and certain other, development policy areas are targeted growth areas. And I'm not sure that that's quite appropriate for,
It leads to a
The
lot of.
center
growth,
of Region
doesn't it,
6.
In that area. So
it does
That's why I
what?
was
It leads to
wondering,
a lot of growth
the-
in that one area,
the-
doesn't it?
Not if it's not,
Doesn't have.
I guess
Doesn't have
the
to.
juxtaposition of the rural with the village center is why I was curious what an example of that looked like, because that would be the only one I could see in our area, but yeah.
I mean, we can talk about it, because maybe it is, maybe it's not the wrong tool, but just be aware that it would bring wherever you place that, it would be within what's called our targeted growth area, and that means that, well,
Yeah.
no, it would not sprawl out, but it would be, if there were, say, 15 properties that are make up one of these commercial hubs, and we apply this village center overlay, I think the plus is that we would then do a more targeted study of that area and a sector plan and come up with a much more detailed little planning effort that is focused on that area. But, it does then, it's within our targeted growth area, so it could be potentially facing a little bit more density than I think
Then we
Region
want
6
this
may
area.
want.
Yeah.
But it's on the table.
And there was a lot of different types and multiple places, but I mean, I think just like some of the wording there could be helpful when you go rewrite or rework. I mean, walkable pedestrian, or, I mean, not all of them in there, but that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I can see that in Galesville. It seems like a more condensed little neighborhood, community, village, and everything in our region seems more
Yeah.
spread out,
Mhm.
dispersed. So it's hard to imagine how that would work in Region 6, but I can still kind of,
Yeah, and
Understand where
much
you're-
smaller pockets in Region 6, yeah.
I think our issue is more keeping what we have, the footprint, maybe improving what we have.
Yeah.
But making it more connected with all our trails and parks that we have. So it's more of a
Yes, but not,
connection.
not allowing it to expand is that because,
Yeah.
oh, well, gosh, now that you've done
Make it
this.
easy where.
The dominoes are
make it
gonna
easy to get
fall
where
and
it
it'll all
already
go
is.
straight down,
hear what's up
Commercial.
separate.
all the way down General's Highway, the way Route 3 has gone. Just,
I just wrote down what you said. So you say keep what we have, improve it, and just connect it to the.
Make it easier to get to pedestrian wise, not,
Well said. All right. Go
Move
ahead.
on here. Okay, so plan land use, is that it's key part of Plan 2040. It's the anticipated land use over the 20-year time horizon. So this is Region 6. We have 15 plan land use categories. You can see that Region 6 is primarily green, being that it's a lot of parks and open space, rural conservation, residential low density. Those are our kind of primary plan land use categories. The beige and yellow are the residential. So you can kind of see generally what areas we have, what land use types we have where. Commercial is red, industrial is purple, maritime are blue, so very, very little of those in Region 6. So these next two slides show the relation between plan land use and zoning. And the consistency, but what is consistency when we say consistency between plan land use and zoning? So like I said, zoning implements the plan land use, the regulations such as permitted uses, setbacks, and more are in the zoning code for each of the zoning designations. And state code requires consistency between plan land use and zoning. I do want to note that we don't have any mixed use, zoning categories in our region, but we did with the mixed use bill 7524, we did update our mixed use zone. So like what you see on this, in this table and on this poster here, they're outdated. They've been updated. So, but like I said, we don't have any of those in Region 6, so not a huge point. And we also have a new marina zone, which is a neighborhood marina district, which is not in this table because this was from Plan 2040. So just to note. Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of just a more visual representation of how these relate. And just to give you a quick rundown on the zoning categories. The R districts are residential districts. The numbers indicate very broadly the number of residential units per acre. So RA and RLD are the lowest density residential. So RA being 1 unit per 20 acres. RLD being 1 unit per 5 acres, and then it goes up from there to R22 being the most intense at 22 units per acre. I don't think we have any R22 in Region 6, none. For commercial, it goes from light pink to dark pink being the most intense commercial use. Like we talked about earlier, small business is the often residential structure type businesses that are commercial. Local commercial is uses serving local neighborhoods. Commercial office districts, think office parks, business complexes, multiple uses with auxiliary uses such as hospital and medical offices. That's C2. And then C3 is general commercial districts. So showrooms, building supply stores, other big bucks, retail, like Porterfield Crossing, kind of like Walmart, Lowe's, etc. C4 is the highway commercial, which is the most intensive. So think heavier auto-oriented uses such as auto sales, outside storage, and there's fewer restrictions on auto uses in general. So much of Virginia. Yeah.
Are those gas stations? Are they C4?
Yeah. Industrial, we have, it's just W1 through W3. W1 is industrial parks, W2 light industrial, W3 is heavy industrial. And then maritime is the M districts. And those are varying degrees of intensity. And there's very little in Region 6. And
That's right.
yeah.
Right, that is,
Yes.
so, planning and zoning, you asked about automobile gasoline stations. They're actually a special exception use in the C1 and in the C3, and they are conditional use in the C4. So they would have to go through a special exception hearing with the administrative hearing officer and show that they meet certain requirements for special exception use. And they have to just meet the requirements for conditional use in C4.
I just wanted to make a comment. I live in a floodplain and I live on a family conveyance. And I'm still zoned RA, but there's lots of conservation easement that we put on the plat. And there's really no enforcement when it comes to newcomers cutting down and clearing conservation easement. Even when I report it, when I file it on this quick fix on the website, it gets dismissed. So what I'm saying is I see a very big disconnect in the planning versus the enforcement. Just like with the other things on the operating businesses, I've come across that too. And, when you live on a small private road and there's trucks running in and out, destroying the road. So, you really want to rat out your neighbor, but it gets to the point where, I'm way back, but it still impacts me because I have to drive on the right of way, which was formerly owned by my family. And it's separately taxed. I didn't want to assume the tax, so I didn't take it. It's all guided by right of way agreement. I digress, but what I'm saying is, so much of this low density conservation easement stuff in section 6 isn't enforced. And if you make the complaint, it's not investigated. When somebody situates, you know, structures on a septic field, clearly, you know, that's to limit, that should limit the development of land, a piece of land. Just so, that's, I don't know if there's anything you can do about that, but I kind of want to say that there's just really no enforcement.
And I'm kind of curious on this, probably, I'll ask you later. I would go down a rabbit hole, so I'll ask you later.
Okay, I think we're good. The last one was just town center, and we talked about, yeah, town center zoning is higher intensity. It generally allows all C3 uses and are up to R15 and R22 uses, so it's very permissible zone. So here's an example of kind of looking at all three in one specific area. This is centered around Manager Forest on Severn Chapel Road. Oh, we can't see the road names, but you can see that from on the development policy area, it's all within the rural and agricultural. For planned land use, you have some in, like, the yellow is residential, low density, the green is rural, and the bluish green is conservation. And then when you look at zoning, that translates to the light green being RA, the dark green being RLD, the light yellow being R1, and the dark yellow being R2. So kind of just to give you a sense of how that goes. We have another example here for the Crownsville Hospital, which is RA for development policy area. Public use is what it's designated in terms of planned land use, which allows really any zoning category in the public use plan land use. So then the zoning is actually currently RA, like, which is like,
Where's this?
that's the Crownsville Hospital. Got it. So this is just to give you a sense of the big picture analysis that we do to come up with the zoning map, this preliminary zoning map. So the development policy area and plan land use that was adopted with Plan 2040 are the starting components that we do our analysis and recommendations from. So we start with a review for consistency between the plan land use and the current zoning. And so if we basically ask, do these align? And if they don't align, because they say we updated the Plan 2040, the plan land use during Plan 2040, and now it no longer aligns with the zoning, then we need to update the zoning to align with that. So that's the first step. And then we review properties and make recommendations, some staff recommended changes in some cases. We review applications. And I'll go into some more details about our other.
For some of the application stuff, I think a lot of the themes, like enforcement, variances, or just special use. Like sometimes are they applying for a zone that they could do what they want just by doing like a special use? Or, is that a reason to be like, you don't need to upgrade the zoning and just
Yes.
do that? Okay.
Yeah, so like we got some applications where, yeah, our thought is you can already do this under your current zone. This zoning is not the appropriate tool for that. So there's a lot of examples of, or even sometimes like the non-conforming use is an example of that a lot, where they can already operate with a non-conforming use in that zone. And the question is, do you want to upzone to a higher intensity to potentially open up more uses, or do you want to, require them to maintain their non-conforming use? That's a kind of a question we always have to juggle.
So does someone get approved for non-conforming?
Yes. Right. So this is an example of the consistency changes I was talking about. This was from Region 7. Yeah.
Keeps getting.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, so this is the adopted plan land use was high density residential. That was what we updated in Plan 2040. So that whole area was changed to high density residential during Plan 2040. The existing zoning was still split between R10 and R15. So during our region plan process, we cleaned that up to resolve the split zoning and,
Is it illegal, is it,
we go R15 or R10.
is it illegal to downzone? You can never downzone anyone, is that a true statement?
No, downzoning can happen. There needs to be a very good reason for it, and we have to be aware of potential for legal challenges and setting up problems in that regard. So we're very hesitant to do that.
We did do there, like any of the downzoning we did in other regions was mainly to match the existing density that was already built. So say it was zoned R15, but it was built at a density of R10. We did downzone some areas in that case just to align with what was there to be more accurate for our estimates that the county does.
And then, and
And
then
the
we had,
landowners didn't mind.
Yeah,
well,
we did have to
then half of
notify,
them
yeah.
responded and said, no, we'd really like to keep our existing zoning. So, but there is that's a point, I don't know if it's in the slideshow or not, but we do contact every zoning change that we have, all of these types that Desiree's getting ready to explain. We do send letters out to every property owner to make sure that they know that this is recommended and it gives them an opportunity to respond.
I think they
Neighboring
say,
too, right? It's not just it's the neighboring, because I got one that my neighbor wanted to do commercial.
No, so this, if a property owner, if there's a zoning change on their property, whether their request or our recommendation, we send that property owner a notice, but not the adjacent. It's
Okay.
different than an administrative.
probably an administrator.
Okay.
So neighbors are not informed when someone wants to change their zoning?
So we send out a mailer just saying we're updating zoning to all property owners in
Right, but
the
if-
region, but they
I
don't get it.
decided I wanted to change my zoning. Is it part of the process that my neighbors are gonna be contacted and asked?
Yes. Or for an administrator.
But not in this.
But not during the comprehensive zoning process. This process
All right.
would not happen that way. But they would have gotten notice that this is a process that is going on. Please plug
Yeah.
into it and.
But when my neighbor wanted to convert to a landscaping business across the way, I did get notified, but it just must have been.
Yeah, so there are two.
Yeah.
So you got
different.
notified in time to
That
be
may not
able
have
to
been
put your
rezoned,
input.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There are two ways to achieve a rezoning. One is through an administrative rezoning where you go to Joan and her colleagues and you request, and it's outside of this process. This is a comprehensive zoning process where we look at either the full county or in this case, the whole region. And we come up jointly with recommendations for this whole region. And,
But it's public in the sense that you put out maps, and here's the
Mhm.
old, here's the new.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, can you move over to the next slide? So the second type of change is just a simple parcel alignment, really. So we have a lot of, basically our parcel layer and our zoning layer doesn't perfectly align. And so it aligns, basically the zoning will sometimes overlap on the parcels. And so we'll have some slivers like this, on the left, you can see there's like a sliver of pink commercial when it's really intended that whole property be open space. So a lot of this is just cleanup so we're designating then one zoning category to the property. Sometimes it's a little more egregious than like what this is showing, but we look at sort of what the intention was and we try to eliminate split zoning and just make it simple one zoning category. Unless there's a compelling reason to maintain a split zoning.
And we will have some.
Yeah. Okay, so the OS zoning districts, this is a little bit complicated, so bear with me, but so there was a refinement of the OS zone back when we updated Plan 2040 to align with public parks, natural areas, and areas covered by conservation easements in perpetuity. So the OS district was initially created with the 1970s comprehensive rezoning of the original 1952 zoning map. The OS zone basically appears to be based on the original FEMA 100-year floodplain. So it's kind of based on this floodplain boundary, but in our research, there's no documentation for much of the OS boundary, and the justification is somewhat unclear. The FEMA maps also change a lot, so maintaining a zoning layer
And
that
they
is
only
consistent with.
look at like 60 acre, I forget the number, but it's, they don't look at small areas. It's gotta be
Right.
like a really big drainage area.
But yes, but they do evolve, and so
Yeah,
you're
louvers,
basically
yeah.
working with an evolving floodplain boundary that changes, and then you have this outdated zoning layer that's supposed to align with a FEMA floodplain that no longer, hasn't been field verified, all of this. So also since then, we've had a lot more stringent environmental regulations get adopted, and so we've started relying more on those regulations to prohibit floodplain in.
And I
or
think that's
development in
the
a
stuff they
floodplain.
ask for variances. For that.
There is some of that. So we heard this concern, during our, it's kind of a good segue. We heard this concern during our last round of the region plans. So what we did is we adjusted. So actually, let's take a step back. We were simplifying basically to, change the OS zone to basically represent where it aligns with public parks, privately owned areas that provide active and passive recreational amenities, platted floodplains, easements, things that we know are in conservation in perpetuity. We put those in OS. Everything else went to the zoning that was surrounding it. So you can see here an example of the green now aligning more with the parcel boundary and where there was an actual conservation easement in place.
Yeah.
But during our last, round of region plans, we heard, some concerns about this process, so we adjusted it slightly based on public input. And so it was anything greater than, if there was like a stream buffer, a wetland, an environmental feature, anything greater than 20% of the property, then we would maintain that OS. We would maintain that split zoning there if it was greater than 20%. So if it wasn't just a little sliver, if it was significant, we actually went back and retained that OS. So there are some areas where we still are maintaining a split zone just because of the concern for that. So that's, we revised our sort of analysis for Region 6 based on that as well. Any questions on that or?
I mean, I had a comment about the mapping, just in for getting into that. I haven't looked at it this year, like all this information map, but my preference, I can't, I don't know how many people are like this, but I like all the layers on one map, so I can toggle them on and off and not having to click a bunch of different links and go to different. So if like the resource sensitive policy map could be on the same one as zoning, so that, and like as the conservation, just making it easy to turn on and off different things.
Yeah.
So with our GIS folks
They're on it.
we're working on that.
Yeah, you should be able to do all of that. Okay, so this is the whole, big picture process. So we conducted our analysis, and then opened an application period. We've received those applications and have made our recommendations on those applications. Then the SAC, you guys will review all the applications and comment over these, make your recommendation, vote on each individual application and make your recommendation. The SAC role is advisory, so, but there is a lot of weight placed on the SAC discussion and recommendation when this goes to county council. But ultimately, OPZ can we can take your recommendation, into heart, and we can decide whether we want to change our recommendation, but we can also go to council with 2 different recommendations, and then they can use that information to decide what they would like to do. We also have, there's also the PAB step. So it's, SAC now, public review and comment on those recommendations. Then we'll go to PAB, they give their recommendation. And then we go to council and council has the final say. So
What does PAB stand for?
planning advisory board.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I'll point out too, at each of those steps in the process, we may receive, additional applications for zoning changes. So we had one window prior to this, and that's what we're gonna go over. When we put it out for public review and comment, which I think is in the summer that we're looking to do that, we may receive some other, applications, and we'll bring those back to you all and talk. During the PAB review, there may be additional applications, and then during council, it gets really complicated because at that stage, then they're required, if it has not been something that's been discussed earlier in this process, they have to post signage on their property and there are time periods and it starts to get complicated. So it's all encouraging. We want these conversations about these requests early and throughout the process for transparency. And like Desiree just said, people ask, the administration wants to know what you all, are saying and the PAB asks and then council asks. So your work is really valued.
Has the county council typically voted on each package of applications in bulk, or do they
No.
break each one out and go?
Well, no, so we submit to them a draft zoning map, and yes, they could adopt the map as is, and that will never, ever happen, ever. There will be amendments, and they will change things based on some of their own requests and constituents and such. Fortunately, Brownsville, you have really only one, council person, so might simplify some things.
So if you go to the next slide, this might be kind of hard to see. Actually, we didn't put that up, shoot.
I can point this
But
stuff.
so this is the, this shows the table that goes in the back of the plan that has all of our recommendations. So it has like the application number, the address, all the location information of each application. And then we have a column for what the SAC recommended, what the justification was from the SAC, what OPZ recommended, and what our justification was, what the PAB recommended. And then there's a space for the council, if the council wants to amend. So it basically just shows you how it kind of all gets laid out in the end.
Which is why we want you all to vote on each of these, because we count and we put it in there and,
Okay, one more thing to cover.
Who develops the rationale? Who said there's rationale? Do we do that? Or do you?
it'll come out in the
Yeah.
discussion,
Okay.
so where you all get into,
Yeah.
you'll see.
If
We'll
you,
get into
if
it.
you agree with our recommendation, then we'll just use our recommendation as yours. But if it differs, then we'll say, you know, the SAC had concerns about X, Y, and Z, yeah. Okay, so
If
last
all of
thing,
those align, the council can still override all three.
Yeah.
Council makes the final determination on every single property and zoning change.
Overruled several other regions.
okay, so we talked a little bit about holding capacity, and I'm just gonna briefly touch on this. It looks at the existing zoning in the region and generally estimates a number of additional housing units that can be built under the existing zoning and compares that to growth projections for the region. So it's a tool for us to kind of understand how much growth would be allowed under the existing zoning. Can we accommodate that growth with our existing zoning? So, it looks at, you know, vacant parcels with redevelopment potential, like using the assessed value, subdivision potential, excludes publicly owned properties, properties that are currently in subdivision review, OS or floodplain parcels. So there's a whole process for how kind of spit out this number at the end and say, here's what we think generally, you know, we're accommodating the growth or we're not. The next slide. So for our holding capacity analysis for Region 6, we have a surplus of like 330 units in our existing zoning. So what that tells us is the existing zoning is generally accommodating what, you know, the growth that's anticipated for the region. So there's not really a need for significant upzoning in this area to accommodate a growth demand. So that's generally, you know, plays into our analysis too of, do we see a need to upzone in this region or not? So with that, I think we can start our map. We're gonna take a little break. Are people?
I was gonna
take a bathroom
suggest,
break?
deal,
We take the break now, then we have longer to,
yeah,
map and discuss.
5 or 10 minute break and we'll.
Yeah, I think there's a way.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Expectation, just how the process will work. So, for ease of discussion, so Desiree mentioned that our zoning has to align with planned land use. And so we do need to run both of those by you all. For the sake of making this an easy discussion, we're really gonna focus on zoning. And with the assumed, you know, we will take your recommendation and make sure it's planned land use is aligned, with that. Unless there's a reason to bring up a specific planned land use change. Desiree shared an overview of how consistency changes were made. As we go through this, I'm gonna point out some of the major areas of change in some of those consistency changes, those consistency recommendations. I may do some of that a little bit less as we get into the next meeting and the next, but here initially I wanna just point out some of those. And I'm definitely not gonna point out every single consistency change recommendation in the region, because we'll be here till the end of the year. We're gonna walk through our recommendations on zoning applications and any staff recommended zoning changes. There are not many, but there are a few. For some of the applications you probably saw, we don't yet have a recommendation pending your discussion. We wanna hear from you all first. We're gonna start in the northern part of the region. I think I put this in the email. Northern part of the region, east of I-97, and we're gonna move south, and then we'll move to the west side and north to south over there. I'll point out several. So the way I think works best is I'll try to point out like a small sub-region of the region. Go through several changes and application requests in that area. Pause for you all to discuss. You may have questions. You may want to pull one out and drill down in a particular one. Ask any questions that you have. And then I'll ask Joel to kind of have the group take a vote on either a batch of changes, or maybe we need to pull one out and you vote on the rest of them, and then you vote on one or two separately if there's other discussion that needs to be had. So we'll kind of play that by ear. Some of these areas may be easy. I deliberately tried to schedule an easy place to start on. I don't think we've got anything too controversial to get into tonight, but we'll see. So, you know, we may just be able to take a blanket vote on some of these little sub areas. And the vote would really, the starting point would be, do you all agree with our recommendation or not? And if you don't, that's fine. We'll get into it. For each vote, there needs to be a 2/3 majority among you all for there to be an SAC position on the particular. That's because this is a policy recommendation. Anything less than 2/3 of the vote, it would need to be reported as no consensus among the SAC.
2/3 of the people here or?
Of the people here, yes, thank you. And ethics, you all got into this, I think, when you applied for this, but I'll just bring it back up again. If you have a financial interest in a property that we're evaluating, particularly if it's your own, and I don't think any of you submitted applications, but if you have a financial interest, you would share, you're willing to share, you're able to share information on that property in the discussion, but you should recuse yourself from a vote on that. You each had an opportunity to file a pre-existing conflict of interest disclosure form. I know some of you did, and you can still do so if anything has changed since that point. If there's a specific case that needs guidance, we can always request informal advice from the Ethics Commission if there's a question on anything. think that was my spiel, and so. Yeah, let's get into it. So we're starting North Region 6, east of I-97, and, this, I'm gonna actually start with, do we have the region plan boundary on here?
How they ever write it to anything?
Have it turned on, but I don't know why.
It's not showing up, but anyway, the region plan boundary runs directly along Veterans Highway here. And so these three parcels that are on the west side are not within Region 6. So that would be our first recommendation, is to actually adjust the region plan boundary area to include those three properties into Region 6. So not a zoning question, but there are some areas where we want to make some adjustments to the region plan boundary, and so I'll point those out as we go through. 8855 Veterans Highway, can you indicate that on the map for us? So I'm starting off with some consistency change recommendations, and after about 6 of these, we'll get into some of the zoning change applications that you all looked at. So, but I want to get into this. So 8855 Veterans Highway, that's the Opportunity Builders site, if you all are familiar with that. And I'm sorry, our map is kind of wonky. Did you just have to refresh? Yeah, well, I've noticed this as we're working through it. I have to refresh from time to time. But anyway, it's where the Opportunity Builders operates. They have a warehouse, offices to support jobs for disabled people. It's about a 14.5 acre site that is currently zoned RLD, and
Which number is this?
it's not one.
Oh,
You haven't
oh,
seen this yet. So this is one of the consistency
oh, I
changes that I want to point out to you. The planned land use on this, so it's the red square there, and I think she's trying to turn on all the right layers so that you can see parcels and such, but we have adjacent C4 zoning to the north. Currently they are zoned RLD. And so we are going to recommend a consistency change to C3 for that property in red there, mainly because that is how they are operating currently, and it aligns with the planned land use of commercial that was adopted with Plan 24. So there it is, yeah. And this is one of those commercial, community hubs that were talking about earlier. So this would be a part of that. So that's one, and I'll go through several of these and maybe pause for some questions. So if we zoom out a bit, Maddie, and look at, there are sort of 3 large parcels that are all part of the Severn Run natural area. So these large areas in green here that are surrounding the cemetery, state of Maryland properties, they're primarily zoned RLD. We are recommending a consistency change to open space zoning, OS zoning on these because of the recreational and conservation nature of those. Moving on, Arden Park, which is on the south side of Sunrise Beach Road, that's 1103 Sunrise.
Sunrise right now.
That one. Yep. Currently that one, so it's about 5 acres, a little more, zoned RLD. Has fields and parking lots. We're recommending a change to OS zoning for that. It aligns with the parks and open space planned land use that's already adopted with Plan 2040. So again, a consistency change there. And on this one, well, I've got to, let me save that comment for the next one.
Before you move on, the OS, does that prohibit any residential development? Does that take that land use off the table for residential in the future? Okay.
Yeah. I will say it does, let me make this comment out with the next one that I want to point out, which is the Arden Beach property, 1170 Oakview Drive. I think it's a little to the north. Yeah, that one. So this one is owned by, I guess kind of a community association. I don't remember the name of it actually. I think Arden Beach.
ADI, Arden Beaches Incorporated.
Thank you, yeah. So, about a half acre, it's currently zoned R2. as part of a consistency change, we would recommend that this go to open space zoning as well. Now, with this, if it, like I said, all property owners are gonna get a letter with any recommended change noted, and they can reach out to us. And in the past, we have had community groups that own properties like this, and some have kind of come down on different sides of this OS issue, because with the open space zone, there are more significant setbacks and restrictions for building certain things. So if you're planning to build a bathroom, a playground, those kinds of things, gazebo, parking, yeah, it can start to be a little bit more difficult in some
There's already
cases.
a playground.
Yeah,
I think it's the houses next to it that it affects too, right?
right, and there are deeper setbacks
right.
when you're next to houses and such. So we've had communities reach back out to us and say, we absolutely want to retain open space zoning. We want this property protected. Others have said, we don't want open space zoning. We want to align with the predominant residential zone of the neighborhood. And we've respected both in both cases.
So you're trying to change it from what to what? Sorry.
R2 to OS.
Yes.
I'm just curious, how would you negotiate that with them? Would you grandfather in a playground that's already in existence, grandfather into the OS?
They would need to understand that if they go to OS and then, for instance, in Region 3, we had a community that was actively trying to raise money to build a playground or expand one or something. And so I wanted to make it very clear to them what the impact of open space zoning would be. They initially requested it, and then they came back and said, no, we prefer to be, I think in their case, R5 or something.
So they can't put in that type of thing?
It depends on where, and the setbacks from adjacent residential properties are much more significant. And then I think parking and access has to be off of an arterial road, I believe, Joan. Something, there are things like that come into play with open space zoning. So sometimes these communities have spaces that they have no intention of doing anything more than trails. And for that, open space zoning would be appropriate.
So strange, you can have tennis courts, but you don't have places. It's
Yeah,
So would that affect, like, if you go to OS on Arden Park, if they want to renovate that field, could that zoning be a hindrance to putting in a new playing surface or putting up new lights or replacing the playground?
I don't think replacing in kind, tell me if I'm wrong, Joan, replacing something in kind would.
Depends what the structures are.
Well, what if it's lights and a playground and playing field?
Well, we already have a playing field. I mean, we already have a playground and lights.
Right, but they also want to reduce
They
some of
wanna-
that stuff, right?
Yeah, the parking, they're trying to upgrade parking because it's a
So
nightmare.
there's
It's not
a
enough.
category that is wrong. It says structure, permanent, accessory, and active recreational uses, including bleachers or stands with a seating capacity not to exceed 250 people. Outdoor lighting other than for public safety, illuminating scoreboards and public address or amplified sound system is a special exception. But there are going to be specific requirements, they'll have to meet for that.
If it goes to OS or just in general?
You know, in the OS. There's also, no more than 100, it's sort of the same kind of thing for no more than 100 people, is a conditional use, which is not a, there are specific requirements for it, but it's not a zoning here. The process.
So the takeaway is going to OS on Arden Beach and Arden Park might have unintended consequences for the homeowners around it and for Arden Recreation if they want to make the place, make changes there.
Would there be
Is that accurate?
consequences for
Is
the
what I just said
homeowners?
accurate?
I'm sorry,
Would there be consequences for the homeowners around it?
If it changes their setbacks, right?
Like literally the parking lot, their
The set-
backyard is at the parking
I mean,
lot.
the setbacks apply on the park, that's
Yeah,
on the parking lot, not
Okay,
setbacks to adjacent owners, no.
sorry, I misheard you there.
It's, with the OS zone applied to a park, then there are larger setbacks from adjacent homes. If on that park you want to, say, build a,
Than a residential.
something, yeah.
And for Arden Park, that's all to the east, all the residences and everything else around it is already OS, is that correct?
No,
Look
it's
at
not.
Gregory.
That's,
Not limited to.
which one?
Under parks and open space.
It's that little square.
Just the square, the whole
Right
thing?
there.
Okay, right, so everything to the south and west is already OS.
So these communities didn't ask for this, it was just done to make it consistent with how it's currently built?
Yeah, it's a consistency change aligning with Plan 2040.
But is there any benefit to the community to actually changing the zoning down, or, I mean?
Well, like I said, some have specifically asked for OS. Others have wanted to maintain whatever the predominant residential zone is. It really is each community can be completely different, and two side by side may come down on different sides of that issue.
I guess it would prevent it from becoming housing in the future if you were OS, right?
But in a different direction, if it's already zoned for housing, couldn't you raise money or get financing off the back of the value of the property, even though you're never intending to use it for housing? So
All of this is
change
part
it
of
as if it could.
and this is why we send letters out to
Uh-huh.
kind of initiate this conversation and this thinking.
My position would be, for consistency's sake, I would happily change these subject to the sign off of the
Mhm.
property owners in question. If they have no issue, then I would have no issue.
I feel like if they asked for it, it would make perfect sense to change it, but if no one's asking for it, I don't see any value in making.
They may not be aware either, though, like they may not know. Is this your guys's sleuthing and you found these, or is this at the request of? How did these come about?
No, these have not been requested. So the
Yeah.
ones that I've just mentioned, these are all,
Yours.
these consistency changes. It's kind of a rote analysis
Yeah.
that aligns zoning with, like, where does zoning not match what was
Yeah.
adopted with planned land use and Plan 2040?
Okay.
And this pops up.
I'm kind of with you, Joel, like if the community is okay with it, then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the environmental annoying person in the community, so that's my backyard.
Yeah, you live
That
right there.
part, the second parcel that you showed, and it's like it's all steep slopes. I mean, the only flat spot is where there's a playground.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's gonna ever get developed,
Developed,
but I would support it.
Are you on the board with the part?
You have to recuse yourself.
No, I'm just, so Arden is weird.
That's not where I was going. I was like, you could do a letter.
Know them. I tried to do that, that's near where I tried to do like a living shoreline and there needs some stormwater on the road. It's like a really narrow beach, but
Okay.
yeah, that's like our beach road right there.
I think it's a zoned open space, does the county, can they apply for county funding to do stormwater management?
I don't think it has any bearing on way or the other.
Okay. I mean, I think,
I don't know what-
do they own all those parcels across from it too, where there's no houses? I think the ABI might own those too.
Across the road?
Yeah, like that, like,
Yeah, the ones that are empty right there on
Yeah.
the kind of
Yeah.
curve, the curve.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
I think we own all these too. So, I mean, like our
So I think
dog
it
food
looks like-
station's there, that, might
What's
wanna-
that zone?
And that's all woods too, yeah. So
Maybe you could
might
expand
wanna
the OS.
Do all of that.
Yeah,
You're right. Okay. See, this is why we have these conversations.
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, not to belabor this too much, but I did want to point this out because all of you live in communities and your communities probably have properties like this. So this is a conversation that each of your communities is going to want to have and take a look at the recommendation of any community property and know that you need to have your community weigh in on this.
Critical area restrictions apply regardless of
Yeah.
category, correct?
Yeah. The critical area is a zoning overlay, and what that means is there are additional zoning requirements and restrictions that apply over whatever the base zoning is. So that applies everywhere, and we really aren't touching that.
What would benefit a community to designate it OS as opposed to keeping it where it is?
So, you know, they have different reasons. I mean, some like that preservation, aspect of it. There are some communities that the board or association is far less organized, less perennial. They don't know if anybody's gonna be in that role in 10 years, and they don't want some rogue group later selling off the property for development. We ran into that in some places in, say, Region 3, which is Glen Burnie and Severn area.
You get taxed less if it's OS
Right.
or no?
That's a good question, because
That would be as carried, but.
we have not really been addressing the tax question because there's a very detailed modeling that is done at SDAT, and we don't really want to respond one way or another.
Well, if it becomes
To say-
non-buildable in perpetuity, there is a different tax.
Zoning isn't exactly in perpetuity,
Right.
because this process we're doing right now comes around every, I think it's 8 years now in the county. It's supposed to be 10 years by state code, local code, 8 years. So another group will be in the seats doing what you're doing in 8 years.
Does it ever go open space back to R1 or whatever? Oh, I didn't know
Yes.
that. Oh,
It can. Yes. That was some of what Desiree was talking about, the refinement of the OS zone. There are areas where, like, a lot of you probably have OS in your backyard that is not aligned with your property line, and we may be recommending to remove that OS and extend the full, you know, whatever the residential zoning is for your property. And in some cases, if it's over that 20% threshold, we may not be recommending that. So, yeah, it can change.
Sorry, Patrick, I'm skipping a little bit ahead here, but I see there are at least a couple more that could be consistency changes to OS. Is that something that we maybe want to look at all at once and then maybe vote on all the OS changes as a package?
We can do that, yeah. The next one is, all the OS areas along Indian Creek Branch. You wanna pull that up? I think it's a little to the north. Keep going north, I think.
Well, confidence, but we're there.
Sorry, zoom out just for a second. I think it's that. You see the Indian, no. This is
Yeah,
where we're
it's
talking
here, we're in front of my house.
Yeah. So there are a number of, OS areas where, we've been what you're seeing is maintaining, so there's green areas where we're maintaining the OS recommendation where that OS is over 20% of the property there. So typically, some of those on the south side of, whatever that is.
Indian Creek.
Yeah. the
Con-
Indian Creek
Connolly
Lane.
Court here. So these are residential properties.
Yeah.
In the first round of region plans, we would have recommended extending whatever the residential zone is to that full property and removing the open space that's kind of wandered onto that, onto the backyards of those properties where those are, representing 20% of the parcel or more is under current open space. We are currently recommending to maintain that open space zoning. And then if the property owner wanted to reach out to us and request removal of that open space zoning, we could consider that at that time.
Why is it not on the other side? Is it over the back of the parcel line, like
Like that large
the ag?
parcel?
Yeah, I
Because that
know.
wouldn't get to 20%.
Okay,
Or it might all be.
it's all ag, so, but. Or rural.
Mhm.
Okay.
So all of those were a bunch of consistency changes. I don't know, Joel, do you wanna? Take a
Well, I
look?
I'll ask, are there any of the open space consistency changes, and we're not talking about opportunity builders, we're just talking about the ones, Arden Park, Arden Beach. This one, is there one Valentine Creek, a little bit lower down your list, Patrick, just to try to knock all of them out?
Can I ask one question too? Do you look at connectivity? Because obviously some of those are very isolated open space pieces. Are you looking
No.
at, you're not looking?
Not as much, no, because the environmental regulations are still in place.
Okay,
And requirements, so if it's in floodplain, if it's a wetland, if it's
Yeah.
all those things still apply.
okay.
Do we want to zoom down to Valentine Creek Park and talk about those real quick? If you need to input an address, 714 Creekside. So Valentine's Creek Park, that's west of Harold Harbor area. There are a lot of platted parcels in that area, currently RLD zoning, consistency change to OS as a county park for that area. And they have a community association property as well, 51 acres. That we are recommending a change from RLD to open space on their 51 acres in order for conservation of open space there.
Wow.
So it's a park?
No.
Not really.
No.
There are two things I'm talking about. One is a county-owned park, and then where the county is purchased, and then another property that is the Valentine Creek Community Association.
Do you see like the little loopy road with two cul-de-sacs coming off of it? The rightmost, easternmost cul-de-sac, the properties around that are owned by the county. So to the right of the mouse. And then but that road's not actually
That
there.
doesn't exist, right?
Yeah,
That
that's
road's
what
not,
you're
actually- it's a
We
paper
don't really
road.
like that road, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Or that park, that's where they were talking about building the,
Arlington Echo would be a better water access.
Yeah,
That's
that's where the kayak launch. was
that's where they
gonna
were
be,
talking about
right?
building the kayak launch
Yes,
off the
right.
roads that don't exist.
Right, right.
And then southwest of that of the cul-de-sac, that big chunk there is one of the Valentine Creek owned properties.
But if we
Right
don't
there.
support the road for kayak launch, we probably don't mind if they get rid of all the parcels.
Right, yeah.
Right, if it's designated
Yeah,
OS.
open space, yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's nice property there, though, like, it's nice land. Yeah, it is.
Grew up.
Within the Harold Harbor community,
Why is it effective?
such a mess in it. There are a slew of these little lots that are owned by the Crownsville Conservancy, and they had reached out to us, actually requesting OS on their properties, so that was an easy.
Can you highlight all of the Crownsville Conservancy ones on there?
Oh, God.
We'll wait.
And there is Harold Harbor Park, Kyle Road and Hazel Trail, if you know which one that is.
Tiny.
But at any rate, where it's county owned and we're recommending OS on that as well. Palisades Community, the Civic Association of Palisades, they own a little park area that's
To the
just
right.
over an acre. We're recommending a consistency change there from RLD to OS.
Palisades is on the water. South Harold Harbor.
Yeah, so those are kind of the main, I guess, examples of some of the areas where we're recommending a change from typically RLD to OS. And, I mean, does that kind of do what you?
Yeah,
were
exactly.
hoping?
Would anybody feel the need to pull any of those particular ones out and discuss it further? Instead, we might consider all of the recommendations to change consistency to OS, we might consider as one package.
Yeah.
Anyone with a motion for that?
It's a little weird.
Go ahead.
The ones where it's the county-owned lands makes perfect sense. The ones where it's like a privately owned, like community associations. Feels kind of weird if they didn't request it for us to make the change. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna build houses on any of those lands, but I don't know what they do wanna do. It sounds like we could be reducing their ability to do something they might wanna do that we don't know about. And that makes me feel a little weird to just do it without asking them. And yeah, they could like tell us, no, we don't want that, but if we make the change now, it's starting a process, it's gonna require a bunch of work on their end that I just don't see why we're making them go through that work if they didn't ask for it.
So
Fair
the
enough.
county owned ones are Valentine Creek, the, Arden Park, and the Harold Harbor Park, that is county owned.
Yeah,
And then the Crownsville Conservancy requested it, so.
Well, that would tell
So
me
maybe
too.
those,
Anything
maybe
they
those
request.
one, yes, for sure.
But an alternative perspective is that they don't even know
Yeah.
that this is available
That's what I
as a
said.
possibility
Yeah.
for them. And if we now give that as a possibility, that this has been a recommendation, is it of interest to you? And they go, gosh, we never thought about that. That would make sure that this always stays open space. And our homeowners association would have the foggiest idea to do that.
So that's a fantastic discussion. Let's go back to county owned properties that it sounded like we had a consensus on. Sounded like Jasmine had a pretty good motion
Okay, yes,
most of the way there.
I motion, for the Valentine Creek County Park RLD to OS, the Arden Park RLD to OS. That's part of Severn Run, and, or wait, wasn't there another one that was part of Severn Run? Was
Oh,
that
that-
County ones,
can I suggest we
Yeah.
just say that?
all the county
County.
all
properties.
county owned properties to OS?
Yep.
Do it. And the Crownsville Conservancy, requested.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Right. Just hold them up for a couple of seconds so they can count, make sure we have a 2/3. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we can return to the individual OS consistency ones. And we can discuss those further. And of course, we'll still need to vote on them, obviously, and if there's different hands up, that's fine, but does anybody have any questions or further comments on the county initiated privately owned OS properties?
Brian, just to make sure that I'm getting your point correctly, really what you're saying is, because nothing we do here is binding, doesn't force anybody to do anything. But if we recommend, if OPZ recommends it, we recommend it, it goes to the county council, having been recommended, it's gonna rely on someone from from that community to pipe up.
Can I add some steps? It's
Yeah.
gonna go for public review, and at that stage, we're gonna send letters to every property owner where
Okay.
there's a recommended change. So they would get notification at that stage. They should have already gotten notification. All of you should have received a letter at some point that this is a process going on.
Mhm.
People throw that
Process.
away and they don't, so they don't plug in. So there is, yes, it'll go for public review, they'll get notice, planning advisory board, and then council, so,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
put a letter for planning board.
But if the person who wants to speak against it at the county council meeting, when it's up for review, gets in a fender bender at Harold Harbor and General's Highway intersection and can't make it, then, we've set in motion the change. And the person who might speak up against it, because they didn't request it, the property owner might not have a chance, you know what I mean? Like, that's your black swan scenario, right? Someone pulls into the Crownsville Automotive when the light's red without going through the intersection, whatever.
Very vivid.
Not that this is like
Not that this
a
happens,
personal thing.
not that I see this happen. But yeah, so Brian, am I like kind of capturing what you're concerned about? Like, once the process is in motion, someone who's invested in it, if they're opposed, would have to step in and stop it, and it
Sure.
might be better to
I
let
think
them
it's more-
step in and start
I
it.
mean,
than
Sure.
anything else.
I've
Is
been-
that right? Well, wait, I just want to make sure I'm characterizing Brian correctly.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, if, maybe they're not aware, maybe they would like to do it, maybe it's not a problem at all, but it feels kind of weird to put in place something that's gonna make a change on their lands that without them asking for it. And then also, I guess, you kind of point out, I don't read all the letters I get, so a bunch of people probably don't. So I'm not 100% sure that like, it wouldn't just slip through without, like, it probably won't. I'm sure a lot of neighbors would start talking about it, but I don't know. I have kids. I don't read all my letters. I don't pay attention.
I think it's more like for like the Palisades, for example, they have like a pavilion at their park? Would that be allowed under open space? Like, I think it's like that kind of thing. What if they wanted to do?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, what if they wanted to build, I don't know, a gazebo or something, and then they find out, we can't build the gazebo because apparently our the zoning got changed, you know? That's what I'm imagining. It's not like we're gonna build houses here.
Quick question. So once, the recommendation is submitted and it's open for public comment, is that what happens after, for example, the entire community floods the
It
public
happens.
comment?
We,
And then they say like, we don't like this, change it. Is there opportunity to go back? Okay.
it happened, there was an example in Region 7 where I think we got the community mobilized and sent 300 letters in and so we changed the recommendation. So, yeah.
And I don't know, I don't wanna belabor it, because I feel like this is maybe a little bit of a silly thing to stick on, but having to mobilize 300 people who are otherwise able to go and live their life and watch TV or do whatever they want, feels like a lot of work for something that like they didn't ask for. So it just feels like, why make people do the work if they didn't ask for it in the first place? Whereas if they did ask for it, again, I have no problem with any of that, but I don't know, it just feels like we're putting a burden on them if they don't want it, and we don't know if they want it or not. That's the only thing I'm getting at, and that's my whole point.
Who makes up this,
I think-
it's ABI, you said, who's,
For the Arden one, it would be ABI.
yeah, do you know who?
So Arden's interesting because like every lot, you're like required to, like join, if you want to vote in that, then it's like sort of in your deed. So like that would
co-op, like a
represent
co-op
all the
almost,
community,
or like a-
yeah, because we have all the community beaches, so
Yeah.
this is also all like community beaches, so. I mean, I can motion to vote for that one, I'll tell them about it.
I'm just gonna push for it.
They're kind of rednecky, you know, they might be like when I wanted to do the stormwater, they're just like, you know, we don't want them to come inspect it. So there's a lot of different, you know, perspectives of, government control, so they might be against it. The board might all like it and be like, yeah, it's fine. It's a steep slope, like I said, in the critical area, right next to our beach. So I don't think we're losing like development rights or something that we wanted to do, so,
We have
to
to-
Yeah, right.
When this
right.
goes further down the line, when the justification for changing zoning comes up, it's gonna be, well, it's currently being used in this manner, so it makes sense. So it doesn't take 300 people to come fight it. All it would be is someone from Arden or someone from whoever the community is that says, but you know
I
what,
agree.
maybe we don't want to. And then it's off the table. It's not, they don't have to fight it. They just have to say, well, the justification is that it meets these conditions, but we've decided we don't want to. So it's not like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this isn't gonna be some big fight where they say, why are you changing my zoning? I'll get 300 people to show up. It's just, we think this is a good idea. If you don't agree, send us an email and tell
It
us
has
you're
been
not
exactly
interested.
that, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And
Is that as easy as it is?
it has been, yeah, and we've, the 300 was kind of, it was a little bit of a
Hyperbole.
different situation, but, I think it's important for the communities to sort of understand, and then some of them are just not on the same board within their own group as
yeah.
well. They've got to have those conversations, and I can't,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
But at least they're having the conversations then.
Yeah.
I guess what I was wondering, is it possible for us to approve them being contacted and asking if they want to do this?
I support that.
I mean, that's basically what we're doing is
Is that
saying,
what we're doing? Or are we
Yeah.
basically saying, this is going to move forward unless you tell us to stop? I think those are two different things.
I think in the past, it has been a bit more of the latter. We've sent letters saying, we have a recommendation in the map that is now a change to this. Please reach out with questions and input and feedback.
and
And people have done that and groups.
I think, I understand like, you don't wanna tell someone you're gonna do something unless they stop you. But
That's basically.
when you approach someone and say, hey, do you wanna do this program? You have to take an extra step to get there, they're gonna be like, why? I'm gonna throw the letter in the mail, why would I go to the extra work?
Because I guess I'm thinking, I understand Brian's
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to think that there might be a opportunity to send something out to them saying, we had this conversation, we think that based on all of these reasons, that it would be good to have this open space actually zoned as open space. If you concur, just send us a quick email that says yes. Maybe it will get some of these communities to have an actual conversation about it when they haven't before.
Yeah.
And they might end up finding, oh my gosh, we've got this whole slew of homeowners that wanted to put a new house in there, or they wanted to do this in there, that they can't. It might lead to some really good conversation as opposed to saying, okay, we're doing this without your approval,
Unless you
let us
say
know.
stop.
So based on the discussion, and again, we don't have to vote 100% in favor, we just have to vote. And if we don't come to consensus, that's fine too. Is anybody interested in motioning that we consider the rest of the OS consistency properties?
We're talking,
OS?
we're talking specifically about Arden right now.
No, he's
No.
saying all, you
No,
wanna
all
lump them
You
all.
wanna do all
Do you
of
want to?
Yes, if this logic
issues
applies to
to
Arden, it
all of
applies
them.
to all,
It
yeah.
does.
Do we want to consider
Yes.
all of them together and
Right,
vote?
I
or
think
do we
so,
want to
'cause it's
separate
on
them?
the same rationale, just some make.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
personal
letter
and others.
would, if it could say like, you know, in-kind things are still, like, some sort of summary of what the, oh, cause like. Like the Arden mentality, yeah, it's very much if you're telling us what to do, we're gonna like rip it
Fight it.
up now,
Yeah.
because you even said that, but. I mean, I would motion to approve all of them, knowing that letters are gonna go out. We're gonna have some public meetings in the community, where we invite these specific communities so we can talk about it, so. I
But that's not your
motion
process, right?
consistency, changes to open space. The only one, can you go to the Severn Run, is that owned by the same person? Is that all one, didn't you say RLD to open space for something about Severn Run?
Severn Run Natural, that was
It's
like.
a natural area.
But was that county owned, or is that?
State.
State owned. So that,
Okay, so that, is
That's
that,
also in the
did we
same.
already vote that?
Maybe can we motion to add the state to the county?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Publicly owned.
Probably.
Yeah, sorry.
Good.
That's a
Yep.
friendly amendment, well.
We'll be more smooth with our motions.
Yeah.
as we go.
Okay.
This is
Sorry,
my first
not
night.
very
It's
good.
it's like this, yeah.
Okay,
All
so
right.
Jasmine, go ahead.
All right, motion to include the state-owned RLD to OS Severn Run properties, motion that, does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is the
Add it.
all publicly owned?
All publicly
Yes,
owned.
yes.
We'll just say
We
publicly
said
owned.
county.
Motion to add the Severn Run property to all of the other publicly owned properties that we already voted in favor of. That's the motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second, all in favor? Very good. All right, now does anybody have a motion for the privately owned properties that we're considering changing to open space?
We're recommending.
Recommend.
Yeah, I'm willing to motion. for that.
Okay, Stacy recommends,
I'll second.
motions, Jasmine seconds, all in favor? Okay.
Okay, so that's.
Okay.
We need 7 for 2,
Okay,
3.
fair enough.
Keep your hands up and please.
We have 9.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
That was to go for the rest.
Even if it's split down the middle, that's fine.
I'm sorry, what was the motion? It was for community owned,
for all the.
all the
Private.
Private.
all the privately owned.
Privately owned.
Which
Privately
I
owned.
think they were all.
To make it consistent with
Already,
OS.
yes, house privately owned.
Which leaves the veterans at general
Right, so the ones we started with, let's go back to those.
opportunity builders.
And going back, Jasmine, I think you had some good comments about some language to include in their letters. I think we do that.
Positive
we'll-
light.
Yeah, it's like the ones across the street, like I was gonna put a fire retention area. Do that in open space, you know, I would know, but
Okay.
not the forest.
we may not
But
include all that
I-
detail, but, you know, it opens, there's a phone number and we're going to come out and talk, so that's.
I think it's good to include what, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff listed in the open space that they
Yeah.
can still do.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think it's good for them to understand that. So, I think they can do it.
We could go back to Veterans Highway. from
Yeah.
the-
Ball field,
Okay.
tennis courts.
So 8855 veterans.
Yeah.
The Opportunity Builders site. Currently zoned RLD, but the adopted planned land use is commercial and we are recommending C3. It would align with the uses that are in place today.
I think it suits the area, right?
It's right on the highway, right?
Right on the highway, there's a lot of other
Still.
commercial stuff around there.
Yeah, it's where the collision center and all the other stuff is, or the.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Where is?
By
Can you-
Caliber.
Oh, yeah, Famer and Phillips, yeah, that whole,
That
yeah,
whole
okay.
used cars.
Can you turn on like the aerial imagery?
That was a Dodge.
Yeah.
Thing, and that was Dodge boat, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
There was an article in the paper about a monthly nightclub that they do for folks with.
I can vouch for that.
Oh,
So, yeah.
fascinating. Huh.
So it's just matching what is already approved.
So in this case, I mean, this is us as planners, we were thinking, this is a case where it makes sense to align the zoning with what's already
Yeah.
being done on the ground.
Right.
That is not always the case. I mean, without,
Sure.
just by consistent,
Yeah, there are a few.
Yeah,
some consistency rules say that we should always do that, so
and what was the original, sorry, it's R what?
RLD.
R&D right now, wow, okay,
That's a big change.
How they get that place built.
I know, maybe.
That whole area got kind of messed up when they put the highway through. So there's kind of a mishmash of things like the weird angles for the roads and stuff. They had to do a lot of switching around to get 97 squeezed in. So that's part of why things are a little bit mismatched.
Let's squeeze some more 97 in there before too long.
That was your plan.
That was cruel.
I believe that got canceled.
Do we have a motion for this one?
Yeah.
I'll vote, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Graham motions to change this 8855 Veterans Highway to adopt the consistency change recommended by county staff to C3 zoning. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconds. All in favor?
How do you know? Look at all the trees around it.
It's only that one, right, just that,
All right,
and it's
let's,
already there.
let's move to the first of the zoning applications, the 671 Old Harold Harbor Road.
Heather, did you need us to vote on the adding those three properties into the region 6?
Or is
You
that?
can, I mean, I wasn't really,
Okay,
I wasn't really gonna ask for a vote on this. I think you all will speak up if there's a. Does anybody have any heartburn?
I supported that. My only comment was, could we do that same thing down on Bestgate where we're in town center?
Yes.
Crossing.
We're gonna get there,
can we
yes.
give that corner of Route 3 and Millersville Road to Region 5?
Yes, that's also.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Patrick, over to you.
All right,
Do whatever you want, guys.
so 671 Old Harold Harbor Road.
It's right down the street from you.
This is, so the first of our zoning applications, 2.3 acres is currently zoned RLD. Is this the one?
No, that's not the one. That's 1341 Sunrise Beach.
Yeah, go down that road,
Is
right there, yeah,
There we go. that
yeah,
one.
there it is.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So this applicant requested C2 or either that or R1 in order to build a small accessory structure, home office or commercial gym, one that would charge membership though, it's not just. What our recommendation is to retain the existing RLD. It's that's compatible with the surrounding area. The a commercial zoning. We don't feel like it is. And there aren't any commercial parcels anywhere around, so I just sort of feel like those uses are better somewhere other than this lot.
So,
I think let's go through a couple of them real quick. Or do we want to go ahead and take a vote on this?
It sounds like we've got a consensus, we might as well.
Yeah.
Go through.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept the staff's recommendation.
Motioning?
sure.
CR, do I need to say CRV 000008? Do I need to say that?
We know what we're talking
Okay,
about.
all right, very good. All right, so we have a motion in the second for 671 Old Harold Harbor Road. All in favor of accepting staff
Retain.
to retain
Existing zoning.
existing zoning as recommended by staff?
Okay.
Yeah.
So 1341 Sunrise Beach Road.
Okay, this is
Is that the one you were just
That
at?
was the previous one.
fire station.
1.71 acres is currently zoned RLD. They requested C3 in order to develop, quote, with uses that are consistent with the corridor, but there's not a specific use that's given.
What is it now?
So OBZ, our recommendation, we would be more comfortable with C1 and including this as part of the little commercial
Yes.
node or
Rush and all this.
community hub
Yeah.
that is there. What do you all think?
What is the
When
zoning
is
of
it being
the
proposed?
Bean Rush and the other
C1.
C1 is the rest of that strip?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is like, it's
Never.
already like really. Like, I don't know that we want that to extend on the other side of the.
That, I agree, and that was the one problem I have with that, is the minute it goes across the road, you know, where does it stop?
Yeah. And I would add that environmentally, there's a stream at the corner of the property. There's a lot of steep slopes. When you come down, when you're on General Highway northbound heading towards that, it's all guardrail because it's all steep slopes. And you make the corner, and where are they gonna put the driveway? Right as someone makes a turn onto Sunrise
Yeah,
Beach and
the
then.
traffic, the
Well,
traffic is.
it's-
not-
yeah.
Well, and the fire station's going in right
Exactly.
there, so you're gonna have a fire light
Right.
and fire trucks
Yeah.
coming in and out right there all
And
the
it's
time.
all the adjacent properties on that side are all residential.
No, and we've already talked about having that be one of our community hubs, but staying kind of north.
On the other side.
Yeah, north of
And-
the fire.
Yeah, and not expanding
Yeah.
the commercial area, because I think some of those commercial things struggle a little bit to keep going. You know, it's been, we've had a hardware store there, we've had a couple of other businesses there that just couldn't make it. And it kind of shows that there's not a big demand for additional commercial in the area. And it's an awful site to get in and out of.
That's right.
That's
There's
the present
accidents.
shape.
That.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
An active zoning violation case isn't on that.
yeah, they're there,
Access
to
I don't know
the-
what they're doing there, but they're there like cutting
It doesn't
trees down and.
They've
It's
knocked
not,
it
there's
down.
a use complaints, so they're.
And I mean, it's not really related, but like that thing across the street is kind of a behemoth, like,
What
wow.
thing?
We've already
The,
got.
She doesn't like the fire
station.
station.
Yeah.
We talked about this, she's not a fan of the fire station.
They can be wherever they want, as long as they come save my life.
Exactly, exactly.
There's so much going on right there, right
Okay.
now.
I'm worried
Maybe
safety
we
for the
wait.
fire station.
Yeah, wait till
Yeah.
the fire station gets built, let's
Right.
see how everything is before we go ahead and add this. I would recommend no.
septic, I mean, put it.
And it's well
Large
accepted.
structures are not in general appropriate for other than city water.
And I'll also add that once you switch it to commercial, you're allowed, 75% impervious area? So it's not gonna be that little footprint that you see there that's dirt, it's gonna be 75%.
Well, and that's the flat
change
spot,
the
that's
character
super
of the-
steep,
the
right?
area.
Yeah.
I
Are
mean,
we
we're
ready for a
right down
motion?
the street from Rising Sun, the little historic George Wash. Yeah, I motion to keep it RLD.
I agree.
Yeah.
The narrative
Second.
says that in 2011, OBC's staff recommended changing the subject's property zoning to C1.
Mhm.
However, the change was never implemented. I'm assuming that
They
Current
came and
president
talked to
does it
Arden,
better.
they came and talked to Arden
Yeah.
and we were like, no.
That may work first, I'm trying to look.
Could we, it is private, right?
Yeah.
It's privately owned, yeah. Hasn't the county tried to purchase this, I thought at one point? I don't know that they've ever.
I'm not aware of that off the top of my head. This is the one that there was a historic property on that. That is-
Yeah, no, the house is collapsed.
Violation, I
Yeah.
believe.
It's collapsed now, but yeah.
They say why they wanted to, maybe I missed that
They
part.
want to sell it.
I mean,
It's not, they weren't.
They worked for.
So we've got a motion and a
Yeah.
second.
We do have a motion and a
Keep it
second.
RLD.
Motion to retain RLD zoning on the site, all in favor?
Unanimous. Okay, good. And this is a case, I mean, I'm not gonna say what we will or won't do, but after we have these conversations, we go back and huddle and we may change our initial recommendation. This is why I asked you all, kind of keep what we sent to you all to yourselves right now, and before we put it out to the public, so.
I don't want to bash commercial development either. I would be happy to say, oh, let's explore some more spots along this corridor. I would be more comfortable with something across the road from
That's our.
Bean Rush, maybe not moving up the hill as such, but yeah, that
I
was.
mean, that one house is for sale right across from Bean Rush right now.
You've got the laundromat there on the corner that, I don't know.
Are those technically small businesses like
Oh, laundromat
Bergman's
is.
Cleaner and Arundel? Cause they're just in little houses.
And there's a realtor, there's a law firm out of the house, the dentist, the dentist.
All, is that R1 or C1?
There used to be a gas station where they.
Yeah, that's the current, that's all small.
Yeah,
Used to be long,
Well, C1, that's all
years
C1,
ago, it
okay.
had gas pumps.
Oh,
And then they were, I don't know if they did any abatement.
I think they have.
It's-
I think it's.
They've also got the requests on there.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting this is what you're trying to do, but if you ever want to bring up an area that you want to discuss potentially rezoning that we haven't brought up, you can feel free to do that too. So just to say that as well.
Yeah, I guess what Joel's saying is if like some of those
On this
properties
side of the road,
had come in and said, we want C1, then we might have been like,
because it's right across.
and it's on,
To
it's
be more amenable.
flat and like, it's not.
And it's
Okay.
in a, or like they're
A corridor.
together.
They're all
Yeah,
right
it's a
in it,
corridor.
Easy to get
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Roads next to the street.
Yeah.
Road is nice and
Okay.
straight, it's easy to.
Okay.
All right.
Did we talk about, we didn't talk about Lakefield Lane, did we? Oh, that's it, let's skip that one. 'cause
Oh,
that's just a
wait,
planned
let's talk about Mayfield Lane.
It's a planned land use change to align with, moving from, well, let's talk about it. It's about 1,000 feet south of this, southeast. And if you turn on the planned land use layer, or the recommended.
What's that big tree area?
I think it's that property right there that we're recommending, a change from, so currently it was adopted with conservation planned land use. We're recommending rural land use because there's an existing conservation easement on the property, but that easement with additional research, it allows for one single family dwelling and agricultural uses. So OS zoning would not be an appropriate change, so therefore we're recommending leave the zoning as is, change the planned land use to align with that RLD zoning.
So again, you're suggesting a change to the planned land use map, not a change to the zoning.
Exactly.
For this
Yes,
process.
okay, this one.
Okay.
We won't have a lot of those to talk about, but that is one that.
If you remember the presentation earlier, the planned land use map is slightly
Above,
further up the scale in terms of
right,
policy suggestions and not specific zoning rules.
yeah.
So you wouldn't wanna do a proposed zoning consistency change on this one to open space, or it already is?
It's
already-
RLD now. It
Yeah.
should not be open space because it, would be allowed to have one dwelling unit on it.
I see.
So we're recommending leave it RLD, and therefore we need a planned land use change to rural instead of
So
conservation.
you're saying RLG with the conservation easement is more conservative than open space?
No.
I'm confused now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying too, if there's no dwelling on there now, then why not like
Because they have
homeowner.
development rights but there's a conservation easement on it. That is the most,
Restrictive,
yeah.
long lasting.
Okay, there's a conservation easement that runs down Lakeville Lane.
I mean, I guess we didn't have a problem taking the development rights from the HOAs, but we don't wanna take it from this. I mean, I'm just trying to understand the difference in this case. It's all trees, so it's currently not. It currently
And
isn't.
again, we're not
This
changing
is-
zoning, we're not taking away
Yeah.
abilities, we're just going up in terms of.
Yeah, I
the
understand
level.
what you're saying.
Land use,
Yeah.
yeah, so, if this helps at all, I mean, the planned land use, well, actually, this does not help, because they're all one together, but at any rate, in the crosswalk that you all have on your table, you can see that the RLD planned land use would correspond with the rural and not the conservation of parks and open space.
So you're gonna keep it land use?
We're gonna keep the zoning as
RLD.
it is and change the planned land use.
Okay,
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, please.
Also moved.
Move to accept the staff's recommendation of changing the planned land use from conservation to rural.
Yeah.
Without changing the zoning. Do we have a second? Second. All right, seconds, all in favor?
What was that street?
Lakeville. Lakeville Lane.
Okay,
Number 3.
1222 General's Highway, we've got three,
Suggestion.
oh, yes.
That maybe we discuss 1222 and 1240 together.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting ready to say, and
She's like-
1249 as well.
I know this.
Brilliant.
1222, 1240, and 1249 General's Highway, they're all kind of in the same area. This might help to, I think you're getting ready to turn on the zoning.
Except the only problem with putting 1249 in there is that
Yeah.
right now 1249 is RLD.
Yep.
And
The other.
there's a problem with.
Well, I mean, in terms of proximity, and
Yeah.
I think I know where you all are gonna land on this, but if we wanted to talk about expanding the footprint of that, we did not come down on that. If we wanted to start with 1249, the one that is just to the south of those commercially zoned areas, it's a small electrical business that requested C1. And they would like potentially a storefront. They've indicated something like a paint store. We did take a look and consider, I mean, there is some degree of proximity to the Dunkin' Donuts that's coming in up here on the corner, but there's another property between the two
Right there, right?
that's zoned,
Isn't that Honey Smith?
RLD.
Right,
Yeah.
what?
Isn't that Honey Smith right between?
Yeah, Honey Smith is just north of it,
Yeah.
but we're talking 1249, correct?
1249, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, because there's another, if you look at the, the satellite image of that, it turns out there's an auto store.
Yeah.
I mean, an auto
Shop.
shop behind
Yeah.
it, which seems really odd, and so we discussed that, and it seems that it's not part of not zoned for that to begin with, but at this point, I would recommend, and this is just my own personal opinion, that since they aren't really in compliance with that lot right now, that we just leave it the way it is until they resolve it.
That was
Is it
our
the same owner?
recommendation for what she's indicated right there. So we had recommended retain the RLD on that.
Yeah.
So then for the other two that are currently zoned commercial, both of them are
C1.
zoned C1. We didn't come up with a recommendation. They both requested C4 on this
Wow.
one.
Yeah, that's crazy.
One property is 1 acre, the other is 2.7 acres. The larger one, the applicant is an electrical contractor, wants to relocate his business to this site because it would be more centrally located to, the county's customer base.
We'll have lots of trucks.
And then the second one, the 1240 General's Highway, also requested C4 zoning. It's an existing contractor's office with a contractor yard. at the rear, supposedly, I've got a question mark by that, because I'm not sure that I really see that.
What address you talking about?
That one is.
1240?
Yeah, 1240 General Highway.
Is it possible, I mean, is it possible for that one that already has their existing on that, to do that under C1? Not the
Yeah.
electric one.
What are they,
the other
yeah,
one. To do what?
yeah,
Well,
what
I
do they
guess
need to
they
do
have
to increase it?
office.
So 1222,
Is the electrical,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
and they
That's a
want it,
contractor.
they want, what?
That's a contractor.
That's.
Right.
Yeah.
Contractors are allowed to see four.
okay, and then, so that's the same answer for 1240 General Highway as well.
An office. They should be able to do the office, but they can't.
But is it 12, what was the first one,
1222 and
Isn't
1240.
1222 right where the south, where the new park is? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
And true.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
And
So-
I mean, we're gonna end up with a lot more trucks and a lot more
Right at,
traffic right where the trail is coming.
I guess the converse, and this is why we didn't make a recommendation, I had a feeling coming in here, I knew where y'all were gonna follow me. No, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, I wanna hold space for the fact that we do have existing gas stations in this hub.
Yeah.
And some of this conversation that we had previously about community hubs and this being, General's Highway and whatnot. I mean, this isn't the most historic, cute looking hub, but I'm not sure that I'm personally ready to give up on it either. If you've got the amenity of the trail, the park immediately next door.
Yeah.
I feel like there's opportunity for this to have some of that people, human
We
scale.
talked about an ice cream shop and
Yeah,
like,
I
I
know.
know.
Can I make a motion that we,
Can I
well,
just?
you can,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
Oh,
put a
okay.
motion on the floor that we keep the zoning on all three of these as is.
Can I just add, but like their argument was they want to create something car oriented because it's on an arterial road. And we discussed together that like all the hubs on General's Highway, we want locally oriented, not regional, not serving people outside the community. They should be small local. And C1 meets, right, for small local
Yes.
stuff.
And there's already,
C4, they specifically said in their letter, car oriented, and we don't want that.
there's already the two gas stations are already zone C4.
Yeah,
Right.
So holistically, as a little hub, seems like we already have enough
Right.
C4.
For what
And-
we want in our region.
Yeah.
I would think that holistically, we want the rest of the hub to be
C1.
more C1
Agreed.
style.
Yeah. you want a mix of things, and the mix is C1 and C4.
Yeah.
Is there a second to Melissa's? Well, hang on, let's pause again. Do we need to take another look at the third property that's a little further south?
So it's
1249?
So that one's different because that one's RLB.
Yeah,
RLB.
can you put it on the zoning real quick?
That's currently residential.
Sorry, we have technical issues, we do. have to-
No, and for the one that's RLB, it's surrounded by residential.
Exactly.
And access is terrible too.
It's surrounded by residential
On the south.
zoning wise, but not practically.
Right.
No, but yeah, there's some rentals on it. But he's.
Thank you.
They-
I think you do.
I think that 1249 one is very much like the one we talked about across the street from the fire engine. I mean, the fire engine. Is the minute you actually start doing the C1 down there, it's just gonna parade all the
Right.
way down. I think we'd be
Yeah.
better off just saying,
Hold the line.
stay where you are,
Yeah.
because you're already doing something back there that isn't part of zoning.
Isn't what's
already.
going on back there on the property to the south though?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
someone else's property.
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
somebody
theirs.
else's
It
property.
looks like it's
there.
both.
It could be spilling over, but
Yeah.
it's
It
not
does.
there.
The,
It's
yeah,
not there.
so the auto repair shop
There's
Severance
weird
is right there. That I've never
It's never
patronized.
visited.
Is right there, but their parking lot or their overflow lot sort of
Yeah, merges.
Aren't
merges
they-
into the backyard
Excuse
there.
me, aren't those both RLDs though?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
And I guess that's my point,
Only
is that
one of-
they have a C1 or more
Operating.
RFP
You're right.
on
It'll
the
get
thing.
worse.
So I
Yeah.
don't think I would agree to going along with the request of theirs until they actually
Yeah.
start following what they're supposed to
You don't wanna
follow.
condone the bad behavior.
Yeah.
Well, they may,
You may have gotten like a special use or
not,
approval.
I don't have it written down right here. They may be non-conforming,
There was a
maybe.
non-conforming use on that property,
29.
it was non-conforming application. And the only thing that I found that we had scanned was a site plan, and it said it was denied on the computer, so,
Interesting.
Uh,
Okay.
you know, they may have just continued to do it anyway, I don't
Well,
know.
Melissa, I think to your point, I mean, there are times when maybe we want to perfect that non-conforming use, and this, it sounds like is not one, at least. That's the motion you put on the
Yes.
floor.
Yeah, so Melissa motioned to retain the existing zoning on all three of these properties. Do we have a second?
Awesome.
Second, all in favor of retaining the existing zoning, no changes?
So I was gonna build my Home Depot.
Oh,
I was gonna build a Sam's Club there, you wrecked it. You need a Costco, you need a Costco.
No, exactly. Have to go to Glen Burnie
Oh,
for
yeah,
that.
there, you crazy.
Ugh.
Unbelievable. I won't rest till there's a Costco in
You
Crownsville.
have to put a Carvana tower there.
Patrick, at the risk of getting us way off track, what would be our role in? And we've already taken the step of recommending a zoning change on property that didn't ask for it. What would be our role in looking at the Honey Grove property where there's an existing business? It is adjacent to commercial. Is there any reason that we would look at that and consider some sort of change to align and make that part of the hub or the community hub?
It's a garden center,
Yeah,
correct?
So that has a non-conforming use on it,
It's a legal non-conforming?
yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So honeybee.
Honey Smith.
I mean,
That's where I get my
Honey
bees
Smith,
from.
Honey Grove.
I get
Honey
my
Grove's
bees
in
from
Annapolis.
So here's, and I know this isn't necessarily what you're asking, but just for information purposes, if the group were interested in suggesting aligning, the zoning with the existing use there, Joan, I think that would be, is it C3 is what is the lowest zone that would allow for that?
For garden center?
Garden center.
Am I wrong about that? Not making a suggestion.
C3 and C4 would allow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then the question is,
Yep.
would we want to do that, and would you want to potentially open up
Yeah,
all those uses?
I would say no.
No.
Since
I
it's
leave
legal.
them, leave them with their
No,
legal
leave
exception.
it with their non-conforming.
That's right.
Exactly.
And then when the other people look at the map, we can always be like, I don't know, it's green, guys.
You can change it to a C1, but it's still be a non-conforming.
Right.
It's, yeah, you're not helping them.
It's
Yeah.
not the person south of them, the right to say, oh, well, we're.
Well, we're, yeah,
Yeah.
my neighbor has it, so.
Exactly.
That was just for discussion. I don't, I'm not
No, it's
making a
good.
recommendation.
It was a
Nobody
good
counts,
question.
so.
But these are the
Okay,
things
so-
that we, yeah.
Sure,
this is
that you
part
have
of
to
the
think about.
discussion, so.
Yeah.
Wow, that got us through at least the first third of these, it's up to you all, do you wanna keep going a couple more, to the south, or? should
When's
we-
our next meeting?
Let's tackle,
Our next meeting is,
Oh, no.
May.
what did I say?
April 29th.
29th.
29th Tuesday.
April 29th. Yeah.
Okay.
I see the Crownsville property and that feels like it could be a larger discussion
Could be a
for
bigger-
another meeting. So maybe we save that one definitely for next time.
Is there any that are smaller that are, you
Coach
could knock
Wood is
out
one
a
on Coach
couple
Wood.
more?
That one's an easy one, right?
Which one?
This is when there was
Coach
subdivided two houses.
974 Coach Wood.
974.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all want,
Three houses.
yeah, why don't we go into, do you know where Brookstone, can you lead us to Brookstone Drive and that area? I'm gonna go through a couple of consistency changes.
Or OS.
You're going to Brookstone.
mhm. I didn't put an address on here to.
Brookstone is off Tailwind.
Yeah, go down general.
That's it, yeah. So all that area around Brookstone, So this one and the next one I was gonna talk about, which is Cranberry Woods HOA's property.
Yeah.
South of Sweet Pea Path.
Yeah.
So this one surrounding Brookstone, that is a consistency change. The Overlook community is their platted floodplain and open space, a whole bunch of parcels totaling 105 acres. We're recommending a change from RLD to OS. And then the Cranberry Woods property, consistency change, currently RA. We're recommending OS due to existing conservation as community open space and the presence of the deep ditch bog. which I'm not
Deep ditch
familiar
bog.
with, but-
Great.
I've never heard that.
I know.
Patrick, these would be passive open space. This wouldn't be any sort of active, there's no HOA amenities in these open spaces, is that correct?
Excuse me.
But-
I'm in Overlook,
Okay,
and I would request that you allow me between now and the next meeting to go to the board and just ask them,
okay.
if you wouldn't mind.
Oh,
I don't think there's gonna be a problem
Brian's
with it.
getting his, yeah, I like it.
But
I
I'd
like
love to
that.
just at
Well,
least
this
ask.
is why I try to point out these community,
Oh, yeah.
every one of you, your community spaces are gonna,
If that was gonna come up when you were doing it before.
every one of you should go back to your communities between now and the next meeting and have this conversation.
The Overlook one, what's it, the community called?
Overlook.
Overlook, okay.
Overlook. If you,
Yes.
it's, if you
It's
go
our
from Honeybee
window.
Place and you're going south on General's Highway, it's right past the canine camp, the canine,
Camp.
daycare,
Yep.
whatever it
And
is.
camp.
What I
And
would-
your consistency suggestion is RLD to OS.
The OS for these, yeah. What I would, well, and Cranberry Woods is RA currently to us. What I would request, Melissa and Jasmine and all of you, ideally, it'd be great to have something that we can put in the file that reflects a request from the board. So all of you, if you do speak to your community groups, whatever, we
Something
could get a
right.
letter, email, something that we can just have in the file for the next round, and if it's a whole different set of staff people dealing with it.
They always thought it's currently a conservation easement, right? Conservation land of some sort,
Overlook, I believe so, yeah, but
because
it's
we have someone
floodplain and
come
open
and
space, yeah.
takes, does a count of all the trees and everything else every year, so. So we're just asking we're just suggesting that we change it from RLD, right?
Right,
To
to
OS.
OS.
Okay,
And it would be, it's just to align with the adopted planned land use,
adopted,
planned land use.
okay.
Do we want to keep going?
Do we wanna take a
Yeah.
vote or look at Cranberry Woods, or was somebody gonna go back to that?
Do you want me to get?
Does anyone live there?
Too, they're right down the road.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Please. That'd be good.
Can you send me the map, I mean, that screenshot, that would be great, because then I can take it to them. I'll have a report back.
Let's go to, 1182 Honeysuckle Lane. This was one that's an application. That one, yeah,
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
34 acres, currently zoned RA, rural and agricultural. They've requested RLD. So not a crazy, upzoning request. They cited the site's proximity to Crownsville Hospital. It's a good fit for additional housing, which they wrote one dwelling unit per acre. There is the adjacent trailer park to the west. And there's R1 to the east on General's Highway, but it's not immediately adjacent. Our recommendation's been to just retain the existing RA, because that is compatible with the immediate existing surroundings and particularly the rural sewer service area.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? Sounds like we have a motion over here, motion to.
No, I just wanted to make a comment.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment now, or you want to finish?
Go ahead, make a
Yeah.
comment.
Honeysuckle Lane is very narrow.
Oh, yeah, it's scary.
That's
And
why I would
really,
think
it-
so.
Very scary.
It's pretty treacherous, and
It
and
is.
you add in Renaissance, all the people that are trying to use it for Renaissance, even though it's supposed to be cut off. I think if you end up with that much more density there on that road, it's gonna be really tough.
Well, how many, it would be one per 5 acres?
One
instead
per
of
5 acres.
34 acres or something?
34 acres, take away a few for infrastructure and
Yeah.
open space and
Yeah.
stormwater and.
And it's a
30.
scenic historic road, which
Yes.
means they're not gonna be required to do any improvements to it. They can't physically improve the road because it's
It's
Not
too,
yeah.
too narrow.
right, it's too, there's steep hills.
Yeah,
both
steep,
sides
yeah.
of the road. And you would have to approach each homeowner on
Yeah.
each side, and they're not gonna
And
give
there
you
are
land
people
to do
that
it.
have actually gone into that area that did it because
they
of
don't
the fact
want-
that.
Yes, right, one per 5 acre, right?
Yeah.
So
It's like-
Sorry, what's the
about
current?
6.
Yes, I mean, I would recommend that you go along with the recommendation to keep it where it is.
Desiree
So
had
it'd be
a
6
comment for us on
houses.
what can currently be done, go ahead.
Well, what I was saying that if they change it to, if we change it to RLD, then it would allow for like 6 homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which might lead
There's a lot of
to other
constraints
plots.
even with the higher zoning classification.
Those trees, right?
And how big would this houses be after winter?
Right.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
bounded by the golf
Right.
course on one side.
With
which
5
is
cars, with 5
rural,
cars each.
Right, and it's bounded by more like open space, there's open space in there, right? That.
It's like
they
head to the trail,
Yeah.
Can I ask Joan, what would the current zoning allow? How many houses on that property? 6, current zoning is 6, and the planned
No,
zoning
the
is
current-
No,
Zoning is
Oh, I'm sorry, the RA?
Yeah.
It's one.
one house, okay, thank you.
I have one
So
house.
from 1 to 6.
So-
All right, did I have a motion over here? Do you wanna make one?
I make a motion to keep honeysuckle at its existing zoning RA. And
A second.
up to RLD.
Have a motion and a second to keep 1182 Honeysuckle Lane with its existing zoning of RA. All in favor? Very much.
Just one more, 974 Coachway, yeah.
Travis Pastrana.
You're eager to get into this one.
I give it a shot.
You can steer us to 974 Coachway. What? We gotta get to it at some point, so let's do it real quick. This is 2.5 acres,
974, what?
Coachway.
974 Coachway.
The downs, or is that outside the downs?
It's outside the downs, at the top.
Okay.
It's about 2.5, a little more than 2.5 acres zoned R1. They've requested R2 zoning to be able to subdivide to build, they'd like to build 2 more homes rather than just 1 more home under, the current zoning. And our recommendation, found it yet better. Yeah, we drove by the site and just, I mean, we recommended retaining R1, just because there aren't any adjacent parcels that this is, would be consistent with. And also there are accessory dwelling unit provisions that would allow for at least an additional unit after subdivision under, certain conditions. So this is a case where they may be able to do what they want, sort of. I mean, if you're wanting 2 full-size houses, maybe the accessory dwelling isn't quite getting you there, but, we didn't think it was appropriate.
Is it just because like there's no other house, no other plots zoned for R2? Because the others seem pretty small, a lot of the other plots nearby.
Yeah,
Well,
but
not
there's,
all of them, I guess.
yeah, there is no R2, around there or adjacent. So it would really be just an island within that community.
Like if it's got enough, I guess if it's got enough space on that plot for 2 houses, I don't see a big deal.
No, they're
I think
asking for 3.
Oh, they want 3 on the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
They
they're
want 2
current
additional.
existing, and then they wanna add 2.
The
application says that they want to build 1 next to it, kind of like.
They want what?
They want,
Wanted to create, like, feel one of the
Yeah.
houses, kind of like on the driveways, kind of like right there, almost kind of.
Sure.
At least that's what the application.
Little
and then
residential.
the other one would probably be off.
All the way on the back. Yeah, and that's, yeah, it's kind of weird. Sherwood Forest Road is a collector road, and technically you're supposed to limit how many like private driveways you have under collector roads. So,
That's a good point.
Am I reading table 17 correctly that a low density residential land use, let me make sure I'm looking at it right. With a low density residential land use designation, it looks like R1 and R2 are generally consistent with that designation. Am I reading that right?
Mhm.
And again, that's not the only consideration because there's not any other R2 around, but I just want to make sure for low density residential and the land use is R2 an acceptable, consistent, so.
So your point is if we did recommend changing the zoning, we would not have to change the planned land use. The request is in line with Plan 2040 already.
Yeah, and just be the
How
zoning.
big is that lot, is the current lot?
2.5 acres, a little more than 2.5.
And so they're gonna be 3 houses on 2.5 acres.
Or.
That's what they would like. They would like to be able to build 2 more. They can subdivide and build 1 more. And then under certain conditions, they could also do an accessory dwelling unit already.
Under the
So they
current.
could have
They could do it under.
potentially 3 units. It's just that accessory dwelling unit. If you're talking about
It's small.
full houses, it's
Yeah,
not
Right,
that.
right.
they could do 2 homes with each with a.
Yeah, the septic question too.
Yeah. they
Oh,
have to
yes,
do that.
something.
Infrastructure.
I motion to
allows
keep
a lot
it-
on 40 acres. 40,000 square feet, sorry, I misspoke.
I motion to keep it R1.
Have a motion to retain the existing zoning. Do we have a second? Okay, a second. All in favor of retaining the R1 zoning as recommended by staff? All right.
7, is that 7?
Hold on.
Okay, you had a.
They don't want to sell it, they have a neighbor.
They just want one more house or an ADU.
They would sell 2 lots if they could.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You really think so?
Oh, yeah, if you wanted just like a family member to move in, you could just do the one, like, if you, there's.
And I wouldn't wanna be the one across the street. All those houses going on with the one across from one big park. The pizza guy, just one behind.
How are we feeling? Do we wanna pause and come back next time? We did a lot, yeah.
I haven't noticed.
I didn't think there were many.
If we pause here, then we'll pick up where we left off. We'll have pizza at the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So Tuesday, April 29th, here, same place, we'll pick up where we left off. Other news, we are working to launch a public survey on those strategies for, transportation, right? And I can't remember if we might have pulled housing out of that because there were a lot. And we're gonna have a 3rd round of surveys, but we're gonna run those by you before we put that out. So we have somebody putting that survey instrument together now. So look for that shortly. I don't know that we need to give you anything else before the next meeting. You have the information, but we'll send reminder emails and all of that. If you get into this, you have questions, you need anything from us, please let us know.
Do we have access to any mapping tools? It's on the hub website.
Did I send the county's kind of geocortex thing, a link
Yes,
to
you
that? Did I? Okay. If I did not,
I did that document, but something, we have something.
yeah. So I'll resend all of that to you all. And what was your question? I'm sorry.
I didn't really have a question, I just had to look into it. I don't have a Gmail account. And it said, I had a visitor, I was in a visitor session, and I had to cancel the visitor session, and then come back and like, I felt complicated. I was like, okay, forget it, so I went a different way and just looked at them the way I needed to look at them,
And it worked for you.
and I was just fine.
That's it.
I find that alternative ways to find it.
There's a will, there's a way.
Turn it over to you if you wanna hold it, or
Everybody is comfortable. Anybody motion to adjourn tonight?
So moved.
So move second, all in favor? So, all right, see you next time.
thank you all, guys. This is.
Yeah.